Hi, everybody. Just so everybody knows, this is obviously not my usual setup. I'm actually at my parents' house. My guest on the podcast today is Aidan Kelley. Aidan Kelley has an amazing YouTube channel called Hi, I Like Movies. Please check that link. I actually will have a link in the description of the video, which will take you to his YouTube channel. The channel has a lot of spoofs, has a lot of movie reviews. It has a lot of just ideas, thoughts on movies, franchises, blockbusters, just in general. Really funny it's funny, engaging, and intellectual content that I think everyone who follows this will enjoy. Please click on that link in the description and take a look at his channel. There's a lot of cool stuff there. Aidan Kelley is also a DePaul film student. He's he's a very talented director and screenwriter in his own right, and is actually finishing up a short film that he's been working on for 2 years. So on this episode, Aidan and I talk about a lot of things. We talk about franchises. We talk about movies. We talk about really bad movies, but movies that are bad but are also kind of good. You know, we hit up all of the things kind of in between. So I'm really excited to show you guys this. It's a really fun episode. We talk, about philosophy as well, and it's a good time. As always, please, it would mean a lot to me if you guys would subscribe, like this video. Again, it just supports me and the show, so I can keep making this stuff. Also, if you want to follow the podcast on Instagram, you can follow it at Podcast Courier 13. I post all the announcements of when new shows are coming up. So if you need notifications, or if you want to see behind the scenes stuff, or sort of highlights of episodes, definitely follow that and give that a look. As always, I'd just like to say thank you guys, and without further ado, let's start the show. This is the Courier 13 podcast with Winter Andrews, a weekly think tank of in-depth conversations among rising filmmakers. My goal with this show is to showcase the innovative talent and ideas that Hollywood hasn't discovered yet. Boom. All right, we're going.
Nice.
What's up? What's up, man?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Are you in California right now?
Yes, I'm back home, out of the Chicago tundra. I'm back in sunny California, where
Is that what they call it over there? A tundra?
That's what I call it. I mean, being a Californian going to Chicago, that's what it feels like, really, because we just it doesn't get lower than 60 over here. So going from that.
Do Californians talk shit about Midwesterners?
Oh, 100%. 100%. That's like a very common thing.
But what do they say?
It goes from like being bright and sunny, then literally you'll go inside and walk outside 5 minutes later, and it's just a fucking hurricane. So that's kind of the biggest thing, is the weather, I think.
Like, yeah, I mean, I always hear this excuse, like when Midwesterners talk about like the idea of living in California, they're always like, but I'd have to give up the 4 seasons.
Yeah.
And then I think to myself, like, I wouldn't mind giving up fall and winter. Mm-hmm. I don't think those are necessary seasons to have. So I don't know. I feel like
that's the thing. When you live in California, you're like, oh, I wish it was cold. I wish we had snow. And then you live in the snow, and then you're like, oh God, what have I done? Like, it's kind of like, and then vice versa. When you're from the Midwest, he's like, oh, I'd love it if it was just, sunny all the time. And then you go to California and it's just, 100 degrees and miserable and sweaty.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like you wish you had something, then you get it, and then your life is ruined, essentially.
No, yeah, because that's so weird. Because I mean, a lot of people who I've heard go to who say they start in Chicago and then they head out to Los Angeles or Southern California. Mm-hmm. They're always like, man, it's so hot. It's so crazy. I'm like, isn't that the whole point?
Like, yeah, I mean, like for me, I'm always been much more of a summer person. Like I probably just because I was raised here, so that's just what I'm used to. But going from that to, but like really when it gets cold in California, it feels worse than Chicago to me, because it's like a bitter cold. Like thing about like the Midwest is that it's more humid, so the cold doesn't feel like as bad. But here it's not humid at all. So when it gets like, to 60, it feels like it's 40 because it's so windy. And the wind is like what makes it suck, to be honest.
Well,
But yeah,
that's what I would
welcome
say.
to our weather podcast of talking about the
this
weather
is
in California.
because I'm fascinated because like it's so true that like everybody they get used to what they grew up in and then they feel like they would like something else, but then they complain about it. I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't get
No,
it.
yeah. I mean, like I joke about the tundra. I like tolerate the weather. Like I got used to it surprisingly quickly, but it's just funny how the differences are.
So you're in sunny. Where in California are you at? Are you near LA?
I'm like near-ish to LA. I was born and raised in Orange County, which is kind of in between San Diego and Los Angeles. It's kind of like that meet in the middle. But yeah, LA, it's probably without traffic, it's like a 45-minute drive to LA, but the problem is there's always traffic, so it's always 2 hours, even though the distance wise it's not that far away. But that's pretty much how the distance is.
But what is the difference between, in your opinion, what's the difference between a Midwesterner and a West Coast person? What's the major difference?
That is a good question.
Because I've heard rumors.
I know. Yeah, I know the big one is Midwesterners call soda pop. And that
soda is pop. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I don't know what this soda garbage is.
Yeah, we call it soda over here. And then like I remember I worked at a movie theater when I was going to school in Chicago. I worked at the theater that the Regal that was like really close to campus. And when I worked at concessions, they'd be like, "Could I get a pop and popcorn?" I'm like, "Excuse, do you want popcorn and popcorn? Is that what you said?" Like, no, pop and popcorn. I'm like, what do you? Oh, that's soda. Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah. So that to me is the, like, I was gonna say, I'm like, no, really, they're really not that different. They're about the same. But then I thought of that, like, oh no, we couldn't be more different. Like that's that right there is exactly what makes us completely different people, is the way we pronounce carbonated beverages.
Yes, and I mean that's a fundamental difference between humans. I mean,
yeah, wars have been fought over that.
Mm-hmm. Aidan, just you sound a little soft for some reason on this end.
Might be my gain on my audio. Let me fix it up here. Is that better?
That's a little better. You want to just tune it up just a little more?
I'm so bad with the audio. Like that's like my.
I am as well.
That's like my big thing that I'm weak with. Is that better?
That's great.
Yeah, I turned it down low because I've recently been doing a lot of like commentary tracks with my friends, and we'll just be like, yelling at James Bond movies. So like whenever I see it in Audacity, it just peaks because we're just yelling almost the entire time. So I always keep it kind of low so we can turn it up later. But for this, it probably makes more sense to turn it up a little bit more, but hope that's good.
Well, I mean, your commentary for your YouTube channel, commentary that you have on your videos is hilarious.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I posted I did like one as kind of a testing the waters thing. I wanted to do this series on the channel recently where I kind of just find a random movie on streaming and then watch it. Like there's like this site called Real Good where you can just put in your
Real Good,
and you can just find a random movie. So I thought, oh, that might be kind of fun to make a video on that thing and find good stuff and bad stuff. And I was like clicking through it to see something that might be funny, and then I stumbled upon this hidden gem of a film called Helen Keller versus the Nightwolves.
I literally watched this before this interview. It's fantastic. The video is fantastic.
Thank you. The movie's phenomenal as well. It's on
the movie. The movie's. I mean, I don't want to say like it's not going to win any Oscars, but
it should. But
it probably should. It should win something.
Yeah. No, I stumbled upon it while looking at that, and I'm like, oh, this is probably some one of those asylum movies that you'll find at like the grocery store, like Transmorphers or something like that, like something really colored and put together. And like it's obviously very cheap, but you can also tell they're very self-aware. Like it's even got some like decently big people in it. And by decently big, I mean Jerry from Arrested Development's in it.
Well, and what I noticed was the grandma who plays like the older Helen Keller That's the woman from not the yeah, the Insidious franchise.
Yeah, that's her.
The Insidious franchise about like demons and ghosts.
Yeah, I'm forgetting her
families.
name, but she's a great actress. But yeah, she's in that as older.
She is a good actress, which is like why I was just like, I mean, why are you in this movie about Helen Keller fighting? So do you want to like just tell the people what this movie is about? Because I can't even wrap my head around. Like,
so I discovered when I was watching it, it's the third entry into this kind of unofficial trilogy by this guy. Let me look up his name real quick. His stage name in the film is St. James Street James, which is hysterical. But
I'm gonna share the screen just so that people can see this poster.
The poster is phenomenal. The poster like is in need of analysis all on its own.
Helen Keller versus, and it's not versus the Direwolves. It's just versus
Nightwolves.
Nightwolves.
Grammar be damned. Yeah.
I'm thinking of what is it? Game of Thrones, Direwolves.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Ross Patterson is his name. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, there it is in all of its glory. Let me just oh wow.
Oh, it's so good. Like imagine just like browsing IMDb and you see that.
Nightwolves. And I loved how you point out in the video that they put Braille.
That's the best part of the whole thing.
That's the best part of the poster to me, which I think that's so respectful, but also like offensive at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
It's like this. I want to be offended by this, but at the same time, I can't put a reason as to why. But blind. Right. Yes, that's it.
Because in a way, it's, yeah. I mean, this, when you think about it, like the movie, if you watch the video, it's amazing. Like the commentary that you do on it. Like,
thank you.
It always gives me a smile to know that these kind of movies exist. Like as much as like, what were you gonna say, bro?
Yeah, it's like it looks like something that's gonna be like, you know, something like Transmorphers or something, you know, some dollar bin type of movie. And it is in many respects, but it also knows it is, and it has a lot of fun with that cheap corniness with it, with Ross Patterson, who's the guy who wrote and directed the movie. Another thing that I thought was funny that I found out is that his kind of assistant in the movie at the beginning of the start, like I thought she looked familiar, and she's not only his wife, but she's also the woman who played the kind of maid servant in Knives Out. That was her as well. So I thought that was like a funny.
Whoa, wait. For real? Wait. So which character are you talking about? We're talking about.
I'm forgetting the character's name, but she's the one who like smokes the pot, and that's how she knew where to find the document or whatever. Who,
of course. How can I forget? How can I forget that
like,
excellent moment?
It's hard to think of her because like that's a movie that's filled with like so many different stars and characters. But I was like, she looks familiar. I'm like, oh yeah. And I think the last character who I recognized and thought it was funny is that the woman who plays Anne Sullivan, Alana Ubach. Maybe that might be pronounced. How you pronounce it? Ubach. She actually voices the Mama Imelda character from Coco. So I was like, oh my god, everyone went places after this movie. Like this is like a jumping off point for so many actors.
That's so yeah. This was a movie that I'd be reluctant to say that it made people's careers, but I guess it like preceded people's careers.
One like intern watched this movie at Disney and was like, that's our person for Coco.
The timbre of her voice is just so perfect for this role.
Yeah.
Do you think that like actors like the actors in those movies who actually can act, do you think that they like, you know, because obviously if you ask most actors, they want to obviously take on something that they think is going to be meaningful, or a film that has great backing, or a great director or a great writer behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, I can't say that this movie is terrible because they're self-aware of it. At least that seems parent.
They're trying to make it terrible.
They're trying to do something that's like really outrageous and silly, and to just kind of just to poke at like what good filmmaking practice is.
Yeah.
Do you think that like attracts certain actors and like even actors who are talented and who want to be recognized? Like,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Happens?
I think there are definitely some, like, there definitely are people like, you know, your Daniel Day-Lewis's who are like, they only want to do like the best roles with the best directors and yada, yada, yada. And, but like, sometimes I also think a lot of actors who, you know, reach that insane caliber also like to do stuff that's a bit more like fun and lighthearted and doesn't have to take itself so seriously. Not only is it like, you know, a break for them because they can just do something that fun. It's like an easy money essentially. And they get to do something that they enjoy while also not putting, you know, like all, like they don't have to like, you know, go Jared Leto levels of character acting and just, or method acting rather, and just like, you know, invest themselves in that time. They could be like, I'll show up to stage and do this, that. One example I can think of is, I think it was the 5th Transformers movie, which had Anthony Hopkins in it. And I think Hopkins actually like said something along the lines of saying that Michael Bay was like one of the greatest directors who's ever lived today. And at one time I'm like, okay, but then I watched the actual movie and it's, you know, it's a Transformers movie. You know what you're getting with those films, but he is just having so much fun in that movie. It's insane. Like, it's so funny seeing like a massive, like respected actor like Anthony Hopkins do something that is like so silly and over the top and ridiculous. Like seeing him do a Michael Bay script is just really entertaining. So I think there are actors who still consider themselves like serious actors who like to do stuff that's more kind of like laid back and fun.
Right. But I guess with Anthony Hopkins in Transformers, that's still a very commercially successful movie that has like a big budget.
True.
Here with Helen Keller versus Nightwolves, it's like a spoof movie.
Yeah.
That's purposely not, at least it seems, purposely not of high production value. It's purposely like trolling the audience.
Yeah.
In that respect. Yeah, it's just really interesting to me because I feel like actors' egos, and I don't want to make like a broad statement about actors, but I feel like actors' egos are so fragile.
Yeah, that's very true for most actors, I would say. But I also think another thing, I think it just shows you, to me, that's like a very good sign of a good actor is if they're willing to, or well, good in like a blanket term is in like they're not like, you know, a pretentious douchebag.
Emotionally like strong, like emotionally resilient because they don't care. Because when you're doing those kinds of roles, you know you're going to be ridiculed. But there's no way that you know that you're not going to be looked at like, why the fuck did you do that? But also like if you're having a good time, then you don't care at a certain point. You're just like, this is awesome. I'm getting some money out of this. This is good for me.
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do also with some bigger actors might just want to support, you know, more independent filmmaking and just want to like maybe draw more attention if they find like a script that is really good, or they're like, you know, friends with some people in the cast and they really want this movie to like more pop more. Then I think, and also if it's just a role that they think is fun, then they might find that something that they're attracted to just because. I mean, it sounds kind of egotistical. Now I'm kind of thinking about it where they're like, I'm going to single-handedly save this movie because I'm a big actor and they're small people making small movie. But at the same time, that's kind of what it is. If you have like a bigger actor going on a smaller independent project like that, that is probably, you know, in the case of Helen Keller vs. the Nightwolves, is a very small movie that came out like 5 years ago, I think. And not a lot of people know about it, which is a problem for America because more people need to watch Helen Keller versus the Nightwolves.
Yeah, Helen Keller and versus the Nightwolves. I think that's such a specific weird case. Because none of the actors that are in it are like huge. They're not huge name actors. Like you'll recognize them from like some popular movies, but they're not like
not A-list actors. I think like the
Matthew
biggest one,
McConaughey was in Helen Keller and
well, I mentioned earlier that this is kind of the third part in an unofficial trilogy, kind of like the same way that, you know, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and World's End are kind of like an unofficial trilogy, where it's
So
like the same people made them and the same actors, kind of, in kind of like different movies. One of them is called FDR American Badass, which, you know,
what?
oh yeah, it's real. It's
Does
a
he
movie.
get out of the wheelchair and like wield a shotgun or something like that?
I think when I saw the poster, I think his wheelchair has like, you know, miniguns on it, and he's
I'm
like
gonna
maybe
look
holding
this
a
up.
rocket launcher or something. But
What is the
yeah,
name
there's
of this
that.
movie?
FDR American Badass. And then the other one, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it has Danny Trejo and Kevin Sorbo are the lead roles in that, and it was directed by the same guy. I'm struggling to remember the name. It might have been called like The Pool Boy or something.
Oh my good God.
Yeah, The Pool Boy. That's what it's called. But yeah, I'd say like Kevin Sorbo's like probably more of like a B-list, C-lister actor.
Look at that.
Yeah, it's incredible.
What is that?
I love too how like I don't know if maybe this is just from the source that you got it from, but you could tell it's got like that like VHS kind of like it's like it's like a paper cover and it's kind of falling apart almost when you look at the top and the bottom of it.
I
I think
just
that sums up
can't
these movies
believe this is a
perfectly.
thing.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's really good.
I just love that. I just love that there's just so unabashedly like don't give a fuck. Like
Yeah,
they
let's go
put like
nuts.
a turret. They put 3 turrets on his wheelchair. It's like a gold-plated wheelchair.
Yeah, it's like a steampunk wheelchair too. It's incredible. But yeah, the other one, if you want to look up the poster for, it's called The Pool Boy, starring
The
Kevin.
Pool Boy.
Oh, okay. Full title is Pool Boy Drowning Out the Fury.
Okay, well, yeah, I gotta have that.
Yeah. Then
I gotta have that title. Pool
you'll love
Boy
who's on that
Drown.
poster.
Oh, it actually turned up in my. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my good God. Can I? Oh my goodness.
There it is. There those 2 beautiful men are.
Danny Trejo.
Yeah. Danny Trejo, I would say, is probably the biggest. Like I don't know if I would go as far as say he's the biggest star, but I'd say he's probably the most well-known actor who we've seen in these movies.
What the fuck is happening here? Okay.
I don't want to ever know what's happening.
I don't ever want to know.
I don't need the context.
FSK 18. Okay.
Seems like
a lot of.
Oh, he's just working out. Okay.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. Yeah, no. Like Danny Trejo was in Breaking Bad, like in Spy Kids.
Oh yeah, Spy Kids. Spy Kids is his role in Spy Kids has always perplexed me because he's also in Machete. His name in Spy Kids is Machete. It's also directed by Robert Rodriguez. So I'm like, is this the same character? Because it seems like it would be weird because
did they just like put his character in Spy Kids?
I think Spy Kids came before, which is what makes it even weirder. It's like Robert Rodriguez was just sitting there and was like, hey, remember that side character from that children's film you made? What if we made like a hard R like action movie with him with, you know, like the gore and the nudity? I don't know. That's why I love Robert Rodriguez. He's just such a wild card. He kind of just does whatever he wants.
Okay, I'm gonna look up "Scene from Pool Boy." What is it? What's the full title?
Pool Boy Drowning Out the Fury is the full title. But yeah, all 3 of these movies we just mentioned. I mean, I haven't even seen the other.
Here's a trailer. I'm gonna screen share this trailer.
This should be great because I haven't seen it.
Oh, you have not seen this? Oh, I'm so glad.
I've only seen Helen Keller versus Nightwolves. I haven't seen the other 2.
You haven't had the oh.
Oh, this is already fantastic. I'm not getting audio, but I don't think I need it.
Wait. Are you not getting audio?
That's fine. No, I'm getting all the information I need.
That's my B. No. I want you to get the full experience. I just shared my audio. So. Okay. I love the crucifix. Get the religious
A
icons
crucifix
in
on
there.
like in like his garage with it, or as he does like all his handyman stuff.
That's the thing. They'll go into really cinematic, like nice shots, and then they'll go into this.
Yeah. That's again, you can tell it's being made by people who know what they're doing, and they're choosing
But
not
decide
to deliberately.
not to know. What?
With 86 Purple Hearts was trained to kill and just come home to find his wife and son dead drowning in a pool.
It's just two mannequins.
I'm the youngest director.
The youngest director in history.
All right, big boy. You want to go to war? I'll take you to war.
Oh.
It's a pool party.
This is the greatest film I've ever seen in my entire life.
Oh. Special effects were not special.
I think it's best you just go.
Yay, Hollywood.
Hey, if you have condoms, that's great. If not, no bigs. I bear back anyway.
Oh. Oh, incredible. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't even think we need to say anything else. I think that was just summed up.
I think we
perfectly.
can just. Oh, I'm sorry. My audio is still. Oh no!
Oh, is
stop.
it? Can you hear me?
Stop. No. It's I can hear you. My there was after the trailer a YouTube video was about to turn on. I didn't.
Oh, the worst.
I think that's the show. I think
Yeah,
we can just end with.
Yeah, we're done. Yeah, go watch all three of those movies. I haven't seen the other
Wait,
two.
now
I
I
know
can't
they're
hear
good.
you.
Noni?
Now I can hear you.
There
Sorry,
we go.
my computer.
Oh, no worries.
You know me, just drinking my LaCroix, getting crazy.
Yeah. The very damaging effects LaCroix has on our technology.
And just on the human body in general.
Mm-hmm.
How many movies have you seen in your entire life?
Oh, God, I don't know. At least
I know you
two.
watch a lot of movies, Aidan.
At least two movies I've seen. In my
At least two? Damn, all right.
I will admit though, I mean, like this year I haven't seen a lot. Like it's just because, obviously because, we can't go to a movie theater and I'm a big stickler for movie theaters. Cause like whenever I try to watch a movie on my computer, on Netflix or Hulu, I tune out. I like get on my phone. I start playing, Adventure Capitalist or something else stupid. And like, I can't focus. Like I am so happy I saw The Irishman in a theater when I went to go to the Chicago Film Festival. That's when I saw it, and it was like 3 hours long. And when I say 3 hours long, I don't mean like, oh, it's long.
No,
I mean
it's
literally
3.5
3 hours long.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's very long.
It's so long, but like I was so glad I saw it there because it just wouldn't be the same watching it on a computer. Because again, I get bored. I'd start looking at my phone. Where as a theater, I can like focus on everything. So for that reason, I haven't like seen a ton of movies recently on streaming, even though there's still been like a steady stream of them coming out. The most recent one I watched is also probably the best one I've seen in a while that I can think of was Mank, the latest David Fincher film.
I just watched that on Netflix.
What did you think of it?
I dug the heck out of it. I thought it was, it was just, especially when you I mean, do you write? Do you write like you're a
I try.
screenwriter?
I try.
Okay.
I try to.
Yeah. When you, it's always weird watching movies and shows about writers because you're just like,
Mm-hmm.
because you're like, sometimes you feel like your process is different from the process that's being explained.
Right.
Because each writer has a different process, or at least a slight variation of a process. But
Mm-hmm.
when I was watching Mank, I totally got it. Like, I don't know, just because the movie isn't about his writing process as much as it is just about his life and just his experiences and the experiences that he had that you could tell were subconsciously influencing him to make Citizen Kane. Like the reason why Citizen Kane came out to be that film, at least in the script form, came to be what it is because of the experiences that Mankiewicz had with, whether it be with Randolph Hearst, whether it be with Louis B. Mayer, just all these people who were extremely affluent, didn't care about the needs of other people that were going on during the Great Depression, because that's when the flashbacks,
which reminds me, I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw that Bill Nye the Science Guy had a cameo in this movie. I was like, "What is that?"
Bill Nye plays
Upton Bill Nye the Science Guy,
the writer.
I don't mean Bill Nye the actor, but Bill Nye the
Bill Nye the
Science
scientist plays Upton Sinclair, who is the author of The Jungle, which was about the meat packing industry in Chicago.
Everyone had to read in Ape-ish, yeah.
And I didn't know that he ran for the governor of California. Like
Upton
Upton
either.
Sinclair. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was another thing that I found so funny about it. I don't know like when they filmed it. I don't know if it was like a couple years. The only thing I really knew about the process of it is that it was based on a screenplay that David Fincher's dad wrote, which is why he wanted to write it.
Really?
Yeah, Jack Fincher, I think his name was. But
was Jack Fincher into movies? Like, was he a filmmaker?
I don't know, to be totally honest. I mean, like, just because I haven't like heard his name in a lot of older stuff, because I'm pretty big, and I mean, like, I'm somewhat big into kind of like more older films. But yeah, the name didn't ring a bell. But like one thing I thought was so weird about it was just how like topical it was.
Yes,
with the Upton Sinclair stuff and that kind of election stuff. It like, you know, really, I think mirrors a lot of what's been going on nowadays with the current state of politics. So like it was stuff like that. There's some other stuff that I'm trying to remember of like, oh, that's weird because that was something like today. But it was weird how a film that takes place that many years ago can still hold so much relevance to today. It's a lot of Jack Finchers.
Yeah, Jack Fincher's a common. I would assume it's this guy.
I think it was Jack Fincher. I'm not.
Jack. Well, no. I mean, Jack Fincher. I mean, I just looked it up. I mean, I guess I'm going off of Wikipedia here.
Yeah.
But yeah, Howard Kelly Jack Fincher was an American screenwriter and journalist who had written for various magazines and periodicals, notably serving as San Francisco bureau chief of Life magazine. He was the father of two-time Academy Award nominated film director David Fincher.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know what's also interesting about that? Serving as the San Francisco chief of bureau chief of Life magazine, that makes me think of, remember the Zodiac?
Yeah.
The film that David Fincher made. Maybe that's what drew him to that material, to that case, because the Zodiac killings all occurred in the San Francisco area around like Vallejo.
Yeah.
And that area. Interesting. I don't know. That's just an interesting look at David Fincher.
No, yeah, it's always cool to hear like how someone's actual life. And honestly, it's funny seeing how like topical it is, because in a lot of ways, like movies made years ago can weirdly foreshadow people's other lives. Like Orson Welles, like Citizen Kane is a kind of cryptic foreshadowing of Orson Welles' real life, I think, because it opens up with, you know, him being like the hot new kid on the street and being like, and Kane being like this big talk of the town type of guy. And then it kind of just all collapses and falls upon him as he gets older. And that's not far off to what happened with Orson Welles in real life, being like, you know, this massive, like young, crazy good director. I mean, you know, he made Citizen Kane when he was like in his early 20s or something like that.
Yeah.
And he went from making what people still today call the greatest film ever made to doing like wine commercials in the 80s and 70s. So it's like it's weird how that movie had to kind of predicted all that. He made
some other, I think, pretty notable films and pretty good films. It's just none of them ever reached that level again. Or
just like, how do you top Citizen Kane?
Well, and it's funny that we're talking about this, because when I was a freshman, so I'm a senior now, but I was a freshman. I did a just like a gen ed literary class, literary writing class, and our like final was a research paper, and it had to be about a movie. It had to be about a movie, and he gave us a list, and they had to be historical movies, like they had to be about people or based on people's lives.
Okay.
And Citizen Kane was an option because, rumor has it, of course, and I think, this movie Mank obviously capitalizes on this notion that the character of Charles Foster Kane in Citizen Kane is based off of William Randolph Hearst. And Mankiewicz was writing that character based off of him. And my thesis was that I can, in my paper, I conceded the fact that, yes, it's very likely that a lot of what Charles Foster Kane is based off of is William Randolph Hearst. But you cannot deny that when looking and examining Orson Welles, that there are tons of parallels between Charles Foster Kane and Orson Welles.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like-
I'm actually just looking at IMDb because that reminded me of something. Back in my freshman year, during my freshman success class that I had to take, we had to pitch a biopic of someone who, has historical relevance to Chicago. And Orson Welles did. He lived in Chicago. Well, he lived in Woodstock, but he still, did stuff in Chicago, so it counted.
Chicagoland area.
Yeah, he's in Illinois, so it worked. And one thing, the big thing of like controversy with this film around the film industry is that it makes Orson Welles not look great because, there was always some contention of whether, Mank was the real screenwriter or if Welles was the real screen. Welles, by the way, I thought was portrayed. I mean, character things aside, as far as the performance for the guy who played Orson Welles and Mank, like phenomenal. Like he nailed the voice perfectly.
We just had Orson Welles in the movie.
Yeah, but anyway, kind of the thing that I think there's definitely an argument to be made that the film is kind of the same thing with Joker, where like Mank is like an unreliable narrator because of his like rampant alcoholism. So like it could very well be true that what we're seeing is not actually what happened; it's just the perspective of that character. But what makes me think more that Welles has had a bit more input on the script than the movie actually makes out is that this character of Bernstein in Citizen Kane, who's like a very big, crucial character in the film. And Bernstein is named after someone who is actually a part of Orson Welles' life. I think he even like raised him as someone who had that exact same name of Bernstein. So because of that personal attachment, it seems weird that it would, it was all just one guy who wrote the entire thing. I still love the movie regardless, but I definitely think
I think it was a collaboration between the two men, Orson Welles and Herman Mankiewicz. As much as I enjoyed the movie, I feel like it was, if you look at Orson Welles' life and you look at Minx Howard or Herman Mankiewicz, both of these men and their lives are entangled in this script. Like both of them are like, and maybe maybe theoretically Herman could have written all of it, and Orson just like subconsciously saw all these similarities in Citizen Kane's life that was attached to himself, and that's what drove him to like really embrace the script. Maybe it was a situation where that occurred.
It could have been like rewritten afterwards and just.
Well, I'm sure there were many.
I doubt they used the first draft of the script.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's a very interesting movie, and like the fact that it makes you ask these questions, I think, is the sign of at least an interesting movie.
Oh yeah, no, it's very well made. I love the fact, and kind of what you were talking about, that like the film's narrator is very unreliable, and in ways, what watching the film, like Mankiewicz reminded me of like what a lot of like what makes writers so interesting is that all writers in a way are tricksters. We're revealing parts of ourselves, and like we're using subconscious memories or thoughts, whether we're using them subconsciously or consciously, they're being embedded in the stories that we write, because that's where you draw from the well, so to say. And in a way, writers are tricksters, and I definitely think Manx's character in this movie is definitely a trickster, because again, he's an unreliable narrator. Just the way that the film is made, it's made in this very like we just jump back and forth and we just get fragments and memories and notions of things, but we really don't see all of it as it was. It's all this discombobulated mess, which I think is how writers write their stories. Like we don't have this like through line. Like sometimes, I normally just sit down and I just kind of like shit just like happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And you don't know where it comes from. And I mean, screenwriting and writing in itself is a trick. I mean,
for me, with my writing process, for me, it's always like beginning and end, got it, easy, finished. I've already got it mapped out, it's done. And then I'll get to the middle part where I'm like, okay, now I need to pad this out. How do I get to like point A to point B? Like to be in the middle, like the second act is easily, I think, the hardest part of a script to write if you're doing like a 3-act typical story.
Beginning is super easy.
Yeah, beginning's so easy.
Beginning's so easy. It
and
always is.
You can usually fixate an idea of how it's going to end, but then there's like stuff how to get there. Like, how do you make it? I don't want to use the word like filler because you don't want filler, but you want something to be like, engaging.
Well, sometimes filler is good. Like, and when I say filler, I don't mean like you're just doing something for absolutely no reason and you're just putting it in there for no reason. But you can have, a lot of great writers and a lot of great films and just pieces of art in general, they have scenes and moments that are not progressing the plot and not pushing stuff forward, but the moment itself is transcendent of the theme. Like it still reminds you of the theme of the film or the piece of art, even though it's not pushing you forward. Yeah,
I think a good example of, it's a movie that I like, but I don't think is perfect, but a good example of like what I try to avoid when I'm thinking about writing something is The Revenant. The Revenant, I think, has a phenomenal beginning. The beginning is fantastic. The whole movie is beautifully shot, but like the beginning's fantastic. I love the end. I think the end is a perfect way to end the story. The middle of the movie is basically just Leonardo DiCaprio crawling through the snow for like an hour. And it's just, you don't feel like you learn any new information. You don't feel you feel bad because he's like struggling through the snow and stuff. And like that stuff's good, but I think we don't really learn too much about either his character or the story. And like, it is really tough to do when you have like when you have a movie that follows one character throughout the entire film. Like a perfect example is 127 Hours, which is just James Franco the entire movie. It's really hard to, how do we make a movie interesting if just one guy sitting there with his hand stuck between a rock? Like it's really difficult, but yeah, I don't really have an answer. Like, how do you make something like engaging in the second act? And I don't really have an answer. You just gotta like find the right series of events to make it interesting.
Well, yeah. Well, I think it goes back to what you say. We have to be following this character and following his tragedy or whatever, what is his journey or tragedy.
Yeah.
But while we're doing it, we do have to feel like we're getting closer to them.
Yeah.
We feel like we have to feel like we're learning new things about them. Like we're getting a sense of their personality more, which to be fair, The Revenant, there was an attempt to do that with like the flashbacks to his wife dying, his kid dying. But I think that like middle section is more so what we were talking about which is like, it's not necessarily like the plot's happening. Obviously he has to make this journey. So we do have a plot, but the journey itself isn't like plot driven.
Yeah. It feels like you could almost go from like after that first act, that inciting incident where Tom Hardy leaves him for dead and kills his son. And then he like goes after him. I feel like you could cut straight from that moment, scrub through like the 45 minutes to an hour part of him in the middle, and then just go straight to the end again. Like if you feel like you can make it all the way to that third act and not feel like you missed anything, then it doesn't really seem like a good second act. Like if you seem like you could just go straight to that and not miss a single major detail that's like important for his character. It's like, oh, he misses his son, daughter, or no, his son and wife. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I got that. I got that pretty early on.
Yeah.
Like I don't. If you're gonna show flashbacks, you should at least provide some new information. Like an idea that comes to mind. I just watched RoboCop. Weird to compare RoboCop and Revenant.
Very weird to compare those two movies,
Trust me for a second. There's one part early on in RoboCop where he has visions of his wife, and it looks like his wife is like, "I got something to tell you." Like she looks all pissed off, and it cuts. You're like, "Oh my god, what has she got to tell him? What is the thing that is going to be the big thing?" And you think it's going to be like this big reveal, like they had a fight, and then he's like became a cop or whatever. But then we eventually get like the big scene, which is him remembering his family and stuff. And then we got back to that. She's like, I need to tell you something. And then she goes from like that frown to the smile, like, I love you. And you're like, oh, that's not what I expected. But at least it gave me some like new information and actually provided new info. It's probably not the best example. Probably a better example is
no, but I think you're getting on to something. It's well, because I mean, they always you've seen. I mean, and when you've watched as many movies as we have, you notice this in like say the midpoint of most movies, and there tends to be at the midpoint. You can always expect that there's going to be a dramatic switch in like either the protagonist's goals or their like there's like a switch up.
Yeah, some sort of
story.
I actually have a better example that I want to bring forward. Scrub the RoboCop example. I have a much better example. Weirdly enough, it is still man turns robot themed. Weirdly enough, but coincidentally, but it's a much better example. So the first episode of Doom Patrol on HBO Max, or was on the DC streaming service that no one bought, and it's now on HBO Max. The Brendan Fraser's character, Robot Man, he wakes up, and when he wakes up as the robot character, we see him get into what we think is a car crash at NASCAR or whatever, because he crashed because his wife, he found out his wife was having an affair. He was having an affair too, but like he found out that, and that's what caused him to crash. Then it cuts back to him. He's doing like the robot stuff where he's learning with his new body. Then he eventually asks like, I want to go home and see my family. Because at that point he still thinks he's still alive because he just thinks he got into a car crash with the NASCAR thing. The Timothy Dalton character, who's been showing him everything, shows him a tape that shows that he actually didn't crash at NASCAR. He was fine. He avoided it completely. But then we kind of get this extended flashback sequence where his wife and daughter leave him, but then he has this phone call where he wants to get back together with them. And eventually they actually say yes. And then he goes and picks him up. And then he gets into an actual car crash that winds up killing his wife and his kid, or do they? But like that's spoilers for the show.
Yeah.
So that is actually a much better example because it tells you something like, oh, you just kind of accept the fact that, oh, he died in a NASCAR accident and moving on. But then you learn that other information, which dramatically changes the character, shows them that he was actually responsible for hurting someone else and not just himself. So that is, I think, a more engaging kind of second act kind of revelation that I think a lot of people want to try to incorporate into their films or shows.
Yeah, it's the, some people call it the midpoint turning, like the midpoint switch up. I mean, that's kind of what I think of it. And again, I don't like acting like writing is a formula. With structure, you can argue that it is, especially when it comes to Hollywood movies, but yeah, I think there's a lot of credence to what you're saying. It's like there should be something within that mid section. Yeah. That kind of, it surprises you. It makes you reevaluate the protagonist. It makes you rethink kind of just the story in general and how the story is going to progress from the midpoint to like the third act. And I think that's the whole point of it. It makes the audience more engaged. Yeah. Because we're like, oh, I just learned something new. Oh, it seems like the plot of the story is going to change from how I thought it was going to be. You're sort of, in a way, you're planting something in the midpoint to make the audience, to basically tell the audience that, oh, this isn't going to go down the way that you thought in the beginning. Like I'm putting this here so that just so you now know, this isn't going to be your initial guess, like how it's going to end. And audiences love it. Humans like it's funny. Humans when they're witnessing a story and they're watching something, they love to be proven wrong or like they want to be slightly wrong about how things end up, because that's more fascinating than just knowing how things are going to end, which is counterintuitive to like how people generally, because most people are very like, people like to know outcomes. You know what I mean? Like in normal life, a lot of like people like to know how stuff's going to go down. But with stories, it's the complete opposite.
Yeah, I'm actually going to say, I'm going to like slightly disagree here and say that I think most general audiences, like I think the keyword that you used was they want something slightly different. But if you do something too different, that will tend to rustle some feathers, regardless if it's, you know, a good twist or a good moment or not. I made a whole video on it with The Last Jedi, essentially, because so many people flipped out on the characterization of Luke Skywalker, because people kind of got the idea that Luke Skywalker can never do anything wrong. He can never, you know, make a mistake, or I mean, in that movie, he doesn't even make a mistake. He thinks about making a mistake,
right?
And
I think the people didn't like that he was angsty, because it was like an angsty Luke Skywalker, and I don't think people were into that. But I'm sorry. Continue with what you were saying.
No, that's absolutely right. Yeah, like they didn't like that the kind of starry-eyed kid had now become like an aging kind of like failure, I guess you could say. That's kind of the theme of the movie, is failure.
Right.
Failure. Like, all these characters experience
it's about coming back from failure.
Yeah, and that seems to be the thing that, like, whenever someone's like, they turn Luke into a failure that gave up everything, it is irredeemable. I'm like, did you like watch the last like 20 minutes of the movie?
Yeah, like Luke saves
he literally saves
everyone at the end.
Yeah, it's like that's the people like the bit thing that like I really don't understand is when people like freak out over him throwing the lightsaber over his shoulder. They're like, why would he do that? I don't get why would he do that? It's so disrespectful to the character. Like, first of all, that lightsaber murdered children. Let's remember that.
That's so fair though. That is a genocidal weapon.
That is a weapon that is the blood of the innocent on its hilt. But
yes,
it's like they're like, well, why would he do that? Why isn't he supposed to like the lightsaber? Isn't he supposed to not? I'm like sitting there like, don't you think that's kind of the point? And then you cut to the next movie where he's like, this isn't you a lightsaber, and then people were like, that's a breaking character because in the last movie he threw it. I'm like, oh my god, he changed. He grew as a character. Now he's saying something different. Like, that is how this works. It was just very strange.
No,
but you know, if people are, well, I mean, like tons of people think that, or at least a very like vocal group of people think that, and like that's fine. Like, I'm not gonna like, you know, it's kind of I might go into a bit of a tangent here because it's kind of reawoken thoughts when I was watching. I'm not sure if you're super into video games at all, but I was watching the Game Awards, which are like the closest thing that video games have to Oscars. That's kind of the equivalent. Cool. But you know, Last of Us 2 won, and Last of Us 2 is essentially the video game equivalent of The Last Jedi in terms of how many received it, because they felt like so many ways that the characters were taken was so offensive and was like so disrespectful to the original and all that stuff. And like you're allowed to think that. But what pissed me off was there are people like online legitimately calling the show rigged because that game won. And I'm like, okay, no, it's not rigged just because something that you didn't enjoy won. Like, if you want to provide evidence for like, there's reports that this guy got paid off or this guy like whatever. But like, okay, that's one thing. But if your only evidence is it's not an opinion that aligns with your own, then that's not it. And they'll say like, oh, I respect your opinion if you like it. I'm like, well, no, you're not. If you're saying that everyone who voted for the game is a liar and doesn't actually like the game, then you're not respecting their opinion. You're basically
stop trying to be nice when you're clearly not trying to be nice.
You're not respecting someone's opinion by trying to say that it is objectively invalid. Like, that's not respecting the opinion. And again, Star Wars had the exact same thing when Last Jedi came out. people were accusing the critics of, being paid off by Disney. Or even an even better example actually is that the kind of the same thing happened with Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad when they came out. People are like, oh, the critics are paid off by Disney. They're not real. They don't actually watch the movie, despite Rotten Tomatoes being a company that is owned by Warner Brothers. Think for a second. Like, why would they it's stupid. But anyway, my main point I'm trying to take away with this is like, film criticism is something that I put in very high regard. I think it's very important, and I think it needs to be embraced by the industry as a whole. I think you should be able to share your thoughts on a film without being afraid of being like, ostracized or being like, that guy didn't like my movie, he's never going to get a job ever again. It's like, no, you should be able to, you shouldn't be a dick. You shouldn't be like, that movie sucks and you suck. Like, you shouldn't say that. Like, you should provide constructive criticism and do it in a way that makes sense. But to, constantly try and invalidate others' opinions just because it didn't align with your own opinion, I think is really just like, it maybe this is a word that's too severe, but it really is like a fascist mentality, like of being like, this is my opinion, and any opinion that is otherwise means that something is wrong. Like, that's kind of the mindset that some people have when it comes to like these huge, big franchises. And it just really bugs me. Like, I wish you could just be able to express your thoughts on something and not be afraid of having like your life destroyed by a bunch of trolls who attack you personally because you made something. And like, that's just crazy to me.
Yeah. I think
thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
So fucking weird about about stuff that matters to them, and that goes for films and art. Like, yeah, no, you're definitely right about like, people will accept slight variations, but they'll go crazy when they feel like you've gone too far.
Yeah, and that is why I think, big companies like, Disney get criticized a lot for doing stuff like too safe. Like, I think that's whether you think the movies are good or not. Like, I think the most recent like Marvel and Star Wars movies, they play it really safe for the most part.
I think Rise of Skywalker is a trash movie.
I personally enjoy it, but like, part of the reason why like I was like, I don't love it.
I'm sorry that I didn't know you.
No, it's fine. Like, it's that's not an unpopular opinion to have. I'm in the minority when I say I like the movie, but I think kind of the core of like why people think they do about that movie is because they play it really safe. Like, it is just Return of the Jedi again, essentially. Like, that's what the movie, like, structure wise, it's identical. But I think the reason why they're so afraid to take bigger risks and do things that are more audacious and more kind of like not what people are expecting is that if you don't give them what they want, if their fan theories don't come true, they're going to lose it and they're going to label it as bad, essentially. But I think that's kind of the crux of why people are like, the more like people who are deeper into the film community are like, all modern, commercial movies are trash because they don't try. And like, it's not a wrong opinion, but like, that's, I think, a big core issue. I mean, the biggest issue is money, but I think a lot of them are afraid to make like big decisions like that because they don't want to upset their fan base, because they don't want an absolute, shitstorm of fan division like The Last Jedi caused.
Yeah. For me, with Rise of Skywalker, and I'd love to hear your opinions on why you enjoyed it, because I'm really interested in that side of the argument.
Yeah.
For me, it wasn't even so much that I was upset that they played it safe, which they did, but I, from watching like The Force Awakens, I expected that. Like, that wasn't like, that didn't shock me.
Yeah.
I think what really shocked me was just kind of like Palpatine coming back really fucked with me. Spoiler, yeah, that kind of.
In case you didn't know, yeah, he comes.
In case you didn't know, by now, it's been what, a few years. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, if you
want to see it, you would have seen it. But like,
it's in the trailers. I think they show he's alive. So.
Oh yeah. But even beyond that, what I've said, I just feel like just the writing isn't that good.
Yeah, I would
the
definitely
writing
say
of the
that's-
movie is very hodgepodge. The pacing is very disorienting. Not and I don't think they were trying to create that effect. I just think it came off that way.
Mhm.
And I just felt like we were just rushing because they had to chuck in so much information in this movie and tie up so many things. And they were just like, okay, let's go from here. Let's go to here. Okay.
They didn't have a roadmap, or if they had a roadmap, they didn't follow it. Essentially.
Yes, which I think part of that comes from the fact that people had problems with The Last Jedi, and J.J. Abrams was kind of like pressured to like change things, like to reverse some of the errors of The Last Jedi. At least that's what it felt like while watching the movie. I felt like the Rise of Skywalker wanted you to forget that Last Jedi was even a thing.
Yeah, that's very fair. I mean, for I mentioned in my Star Wars video where I kind of go over everything. I mentioned that there are just so many things in that movie that flat out just don't make sense and are never explained. Like, I think the biggest example is probably Palpatine, like you mentioned. They just don't do a good job at all explaining how he came back.
There, and you're
He's
just like,
back.
what? You
It's
can't
like, okay,
just
where
do
did you come
that. You
from?
can't just bring him back and he's just back. Like, and
Yeah,
that's
you got to
it.
have like some explanation. Like you get like one throwaway line from Mary from Lord of the Rings where he's like, it's cloning. And like everyone's like, oh, okay. It's
okay,
like,
cool. Well, I guess that's it.
But like the way I described it when I was like, oh, I enjoyed it. It's like, I enjoyed it. I'm not going to say it's a great movie because I don't think it is. The thing is with my thing with Star Wars is that I love it. I think it's like really, it's, just a massive part of my childhood. And I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt right now. It says
I mean, Pew, what does it say? Pew.
It says a pew pew vroosh beep boop vroosh. But it's
Really?
a Star Wars font, so that makes it funny. Yeah.
Roosh beep boo roosh boo.
Yeah.
That's good. I like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
one.
But like going back to the Palpatine again, like, okay, it doesn't make any sense why he's here. How did he come back? I'm sure there will be like some TV show or video game or something that will explain it. But like that doesn't excuse it as a problem with the film storytelling, because it absolutely is. But as nonsensical as Palpatine being there makes sense, Ian McDiarmid just has so much fun playing that character. He is just having an absolute blast in that role every time he's on screen. And like he, even though I don't understand why he's there, he is one of the better parts of the film because his performance is just so fucking good. Like that is just, it was like he never left essentially. Again, it didn't make sense, but like there's also other stuff like, the Finn, like I didn't even know Finn was supposed to be force sensitive until until I read an article about it after seeing the movie. They're like, I'm like, what? When did that happen? And you're like, oh, that's the secret he was trying to tell. Like the secret that he never actually told. Okay, like that's. But at the same time, like my standards for Star Wars, I guess, are just very low, even though I enjoy it a lot. Like
when did they get low? Like was it
the
after?
Prequels. The prequels lowered my standards significantly for those movies, especially as I got older and realized how terrible they were. Like those are the core reason why my standards got lowered. And again, here's the thing. I enjoy all the Star Wars movies, every single one of them, even the poopy animated movie, which isn't even a movie. It's like a pilot episode for the show. I think easily the worst one, in my opinion, is Attack of the Clones. I think that movie's hot garbage. It's hilarious, but it's also hot garbage.
I always go back and forth between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. I always say that just to me, Phantom Menace is just so fucking boring for most of it.
Yeah.
That's
to me,
why
Attack of the Clones is also boring,
movies.
but also I think the thing that tips Attack of the Clones for me over Phantom Menace is that Phantom Menace still, first of all, the CGI effects are better than the CGI effects for Attack of the Clones, which doesn't make any sense because it came out way before. But I think a big reason for that is that there is still a decent amount of practical effects. You still got the Yoda puppet. Darth Maul has like the whole makeup that took like 10 hours to do or whatever. But Attack of the Clones is all CGI, and it's not even good CGI. Like, I remember as a kid, I'm like, oh, this looks cool. But I'm watching it now. I'm like, oh my God, this looks like a PlayStation 2 game. Like, it does not.
Because now we have all this stuff.
Yeah, if you were to
It
ask
makes
me
it
like
work.
10 years ago, I would say Phantom Menace. But as they both start to age, I think Phantom Menace has aged slightly better than Attack of the Clones, mainly just because of its visual style. Like Phantom Menace, I was like, okay, this is close enough to Star Wars, and Attack of the Clones is like, what the hell is this? Like, what what is happening here? What is this like cyberpunk level that is Coruscant? What is this like, Mars planet? It was like, it detached itself so much. But at the same time, and this kind of gets into like my bigger point, like I think all the stuff that has happened after Attack of the Clones, including like the shows and video games and stuff, has added so much meat, I guess you could say, to that part of the canon that a lot of people like it a lot more. And I assume probably the same thing is going to happen with these newer movies where they'll like make shows and stuff, like they'll explain the Palpatine thing and people will be like, oh, now it makes sense.
Now it's actually not, it's still bad, but it's like
still
not
like a
as
problem
bad.
with the film, but now you're like, okay, they explained it. Like I actually think that my theory, my headcanon, I'm a big Star Wars theorist, so I do this all the time. I think that's what's going to happen. I think The Mandalorian is leading up to some sort of twist with the explanation of Palpatine. I think that might, I won't go too into detail.
That show,
but you like it or don't like it?
I like that show.
Oh, I love it.
I don't want but I don't want them to like remind me of Rise of Skywalker.
That's
like going into the Palpatine stuff. But
yeah,
if Ian McDermott gets in his cloak and is good, I guess I'll forgive it.
That was my thing with that movie. He's like, okay, why are you here? It doesn't make sense. Then he starts talking. He's like, do it. And I'm like, who cares? Whatever. I'm just gonna sit back and have fun and not take it seriously. But yeah, it's still got so many problems though. Like it's not a perfect movie by any chance. Like they tried to make a film that would like please fans when they're like, oh, Lando's back and Palpatine's back, and like while
Lando is crap in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any opinion on Lando in it. Like he's kind of just there. Like he's not good, he's not bad, he's kind of just there. But again, me not taking the movie seriously, I was just happy he was back.
I mean, yeah.
But yeah, it's still like
Star Wars
it's
has
got
hurt
so
me
many
so many
issues.
times.
Yeah. Like my thoughts on Star Wars is that like, does it have, lightsabers and blasters and good music and somewhat cool special effects? And they're like, yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm happy. Okay. So I just don't take it that seriously.
I'll watch it at least, but like I'll give it a chance.
Yeah. But yeah, that's Star Wars is a many-feathered bird when it comes to many opinions. I just don't think people should take it all that seriously. Like people just take it to such an astronomically silly level when they're like, you ruined my childhood. I'm like, no, the other movies didn't go away.
Ruined your childhood.
Yeah, they didn't ruin anything just because it was bad. Like that's not
how
that's not, it only ruins it if you let it ruin it. It's kind of my philosophy.
That's true.
Yeah, it's like it ruins the legacy of the characters. Like then pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah, don't watch it. Like just never watch it again.
Yeah.
But then people are gonna be like, "Oh, but it exists somewhere, so like I can't forget about it." Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I will say this though: Mandalorian is better than Mandalorian is probably the best Star Wars thing that has come out since Return of the Jedi. Like it's better than prequels, better than the sequels. It's like the best thing that's come out since those movies.
Yeah.
And now we're getting so much more of it because they announced like 10 different Star Wars shows just a few days ago.
Yeah, which I didn't see that. Which ones did they announce?
Oh God. Okay. Let me look up the list because there's just so many.
I'll look for it.
Yeah. I know the first one is they're making, because Mandalorian is just such a massive success on Disney Plus. It's like that is the only reason to get Disney Plus in terms of original content is the Mandalorian. But I know the first one they announced, it's a spin-off show featuring the Gina Carano character. And kind of, I think it's called like Rangers of the New Republic, I think is the name of the show. Yeah, that's it. But that's the biggest one, or that was the first big one they announced, which is interesting because I thought that Gina Carano was kind of in hot water. I see your file explorer. Wasn't sure. Did you pull it up on your computer?
Yeah, there we go.
There it is. Yeah.
They're gonna do what is her name? Oh my goodness.
Ahsoka. Yeah. She's getting her own show. That's another one, which is pretty big because she was. That's a crazy evolution of a character. They introduced her in that animated movie that no one likes, and she's developed like so much popularity that now they made a live action thing of her. That's crazy.
Whoa.
But yeah, she's getting her own show. Obi-Wan, they mentioned before, is coming back in his own show.
Obi-Wan
returning. Yeah.
And wait, Hayden Christensen will return as Darth Vader. That's actually,
Yes.
I'm actually pro that. That's very.
Which will be interesting because like he's Darth. It's probably going to be a bunch of flashback stuff because he's going to be in the suit the whole time. And I assume I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear Hayden Christensen's voice as Darth Vader.
Remember that Rebels episode where like Ahsoka, like they were dueling and then Ahsoka sliced his mask? Maybe that will happen. Like Obi-Wan and them were like doing like their initial duel, and then you'll see a part of his face. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I just want James Earl Jones to come back as the voice because like it's not Vader without James Earl Jones. That's why that part of Rebels was so good because James Earl Jones was still back. But yeah, the guy from Rogue One got his own show. Lando's getting his own show.
Yes. I mean, anything with Donald Glover, I get very excited for.
Yeah, they didn't say if it was Donald Glover or Billy D. Williams. They only announced that Justin Simeon, who did Dear White People on Netflix, is the one who's going to show run the whole thing.
Oh, well, I would think they would bring him back. Unless he's busy doing like Atlanta season 3 or there's just other things that he's doing.
Are they making a season 3 of Atlanta? I feel like it's been so long since season 2.
Well, there were talks about it. There were talks about doing that. I believe Donald Glover was very pro doing that. They just had to like reschedule.
Yeah, I know he wanted to do it, but I wasn't sure if it ever got approved.
I thought it was.
It might have been. I mean, I just haven't heard it. I haven't heard the name Atlanta in a while. But yeah, they're also making a
droid story.
Yeah, that's a R2D2. Star Wars Visions sounds interesting because it's supposed to be like it's an anthology series, but they're all being made by Japanese creators. So it's supposed to be like Star Wars anime, essentially, which kind of sounds awesome.
I just recently have been getting more into anime. This is perfect.
I have to, yeah. And then the other two, one of them was like a prequel.
Have you seen One Punch Man?
No, I haven't. I've been telling myself for like the past like 2 years, I got to get caught up on Attack on Titan, and I still haven't done it.
Ooh, I also need to do that.
I got to get caught up on that. I watched Death Note recently. I loved it. That was really good. And then I watched the terrible Willem Dafoe movie, but
which movie?
They made a live action Death Note movie on Netflix.
Oh yeah, that was
and Willem Dafoe's Ryuk, which is perfect, but everything else sucked. Oh, that's another thing we could talk about. Did you hear the Spider-Man news today?
No.
Well, it seems like clear that they're trying to do the whole like Spider-Verse thing because so far they announced Jamie Foxx is coming back as Electro. Both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are coming back. And also Alfred Molina is coming back as Dr. Octopus. And now they're saying that Willem Dafoe and Thomas Hayden Church are coming back as Green Goblin as Sandman, which is nuts. It's like, who is in this movie at this point? 3 and 4. Oh, so they got a 4th season.
And 4 delayed as filming start dates moved to early 20. Well, yeah, because I mean, with COVID, it's probably being pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, the long wait for Atlanta season 3 is not nearly over. Though the show was originally slated to return in January 2021, the ongoing production hiatus caused by the coronavirus pandemic means that work on Atlanta season 3 will not be able to resume until next year.
Oh, geez, man. So they haven't even started yet.
Well, that makes me feel better because, I mean, I thought that, there's a part of me that was like I didn't even know they were going to do it.
Yeah.
But at least they're like dead set on doing not just a season 3, but a season 4.
Yeah. No, FX, I think, is just a very underrated channel in general. And I'm glad to see Disney hasn't wrecked it yet since they became in possession of it.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like FX is, I mean, I feel like FX isn't under. I mean, they've made some of the best shows.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people just don't talk about them as a network, though.
I mean, they may not come up in discussion, but we all know when people say FX, I think people think of good shows. They're like, oh
yeah, I'd
no,
say generally they think that, but like you don't like most of the time you'll hear people like, oh my god, HBO makes the best stuff. HBO, like HBO is kind of the seal of approval. I don't think maybe it does, but like FX, like usually just
FX
because
doesn't
I think the
have-
big reason is like it's cable television versus premium television. I think
Exactly.
that's the biggest thing.
Exactly. I think it's only because FX hasn't yet, because FX shows are on streaming services, but FX
Yeah.
doesn't have their streaming platform.
And they're still limited in like the stuff they can do and say. Like you can, have violent zombie gore on cable television, but you can't say the F word. It's just so stupid. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. They even, I think that the Disney thing, they announced some new FX stuff, like an American Horror Story spinoff. Most of it was original, but I think the biggest one was that the guy who did Fargo is making an Alien show, which will be interesting. It'd be nice to get something new in the Alien universe that's not the worst ever. Which has been a while. Oh,
Yeah.
I hate Alien Covenant so much. I hate that movie.
Gotta be honest with you, I've only seen the first one.
No, okay, that's probably good. I mean, like Aliens, a lot of people like.
I know I should see Aliens too. I don't know why I haven't.
I personally, this is not the most popular opinion, but I prefer Alien to Aliens personally because I like. It makes sense why the aliens aren't as scary in Aliens because there's more of them and they're like Marines, so they have the equipment to fight them. So I'm like, okay, it makes sense. But still, the idea of just like one alien like picking people off one by one on this ship of people who like have no idea how to deal with it, I think is much more engaging and scarier than Aliens. And Alien is also like much more well acted, I would say, because Aliens kind of like dips a lot into the kind of like 80s action movie genre, and with that comes like the cheesiness, the corniness. Still a good movie, but like it doesn't have the kind of like gritty indie feel that the first Alien film has.
No. Well, I have no idea. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I know is the first movie I enjoy very much. I think the first movie is a great horror.
The first movie is probably it's arguably my favorite horror movie of all time. Definitely my favorite sci-fi horror movie ever made.
Well, what is your favorite movie of all time?
Oh, that's a good question. My answer for that used to change all the time, but I think I've actually locked in on an answer.
Really?
In the Rain, I think, is my all-time favorite movie.
Really?
Yeah, the reason why is there's a couple reasons. Well, like it's the earliest film I can remember watching that wasn't like an animated movie, because I remember I was at my grandma's house, my grandparents' house once. And I was watching Disney movies they had on VHS. And I guess they just got so sick of me watching those movies because they could just, hear the, fucking Circle of Life in the background or whatever. And they're like, hey, we got to have them watch something else. Here, watch this. And they put Singing in the Rain on. And it was the first time I saw a movie that was like being portrayed by like people, because my dumb kid brain thought that
couldn't even handle people.
Like, yeah, if it's like live action, that must be for adults. I'm not ready for that. It doesn't have like pretty colors and cartoons, then I can't watch it. It's just a fact. But then I started watching it, and it still had, even though it was like a live action thing, it had all these crazy colors and the crazy, like the dancing and the singing was like so like crazy to me. I was like, how did they do that? That's crazy. How do you do the back? How do you even do that? Like, obviously, like nowadays, it's not that hard to figure out how they did it. They're just athletic.
But I mean, for a kid, that was magical.
Yeah, it was a magical experience. And then like years later, once I start getting more into film, I got it on Blu-ray. I actually found like the collector's edition on Blu-ray. It was like sick. And I put it in. I'm like, it's probably not gonna be as good as I remember it. And I watch it and I'm like, oh my God, it's even better. Like
why was it better?
I think it's because I understood what as a kid, you don't really pay attention to stuff like dialogue, the more like nuanced type of stuff. And like the humor in it holds up phenomenally well. Like there's this great little gag where not just the visual humor, but like just the dialogue is hysterical as well. There's this great little gag where Gene Kelly's character is kind of swarmed by people because he's a big celebrity, and his friend, played by Donald O'Connor, he kind of looks to him and says like, call me a cab. And then he just kind of looks at him deadpan and goes, okay, you're a cab. It's like, that's such a simple, funny joke. And that was one of the biggest reasons, but I also just had a lot more appreciation for like the dancing and the cinematography and the songs, because they don't really make movies like that anymore. Back in that time period when that movie came out, kind of every movie looked like that. Especially if it was a musical, you just had to like kind of follow those guidelines, because that's what they thought was, not only was there like, you know, the studio code and stuff, but that's just what they thought made a successful, profitable movie. It wasn't really until The Graduate when they like started to branch out more and do like more weird, wacky stuff. But it was just so refreshing. And like another thing too, I was gonna mention this with Mank, but I kind of just forgot to bring it up. Just the setting of like old school Hollywood has always just been like a really fascinating setting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love movies about making movies. Like I just find it fascinating. Like some of my favorite movies are like, you know, Get Shorty is a good example, where it's about a gangster making a movie. And even like films that I don't particularly love, like Hail Caesar, just the aesthetic of that old Hollywood aesthetic, just I love it. It's just really cool to me. I can't really
Yeah.
explain it.
I know, I totally agree with that, and that's why that was one of the reasons why I loved watching Mank. What do you think? Why do you think that is? Why do you think we're obsessed with old Hollywood?
I think just because it's like another world. Like it's so different, not only from our like reality and what we usually deal with, like even taking away like the filmmaking aspect, it was different back then. It was such like it was considered like this magical place. Obviously, if you know, if you were like, you know, an 18-year-old woman and she got a interview with the producer, terrible things might have happened.
Right. Well,
But
right, 'cause that's the thing, because
but the facade of it is really
the
cool.
facade is very right. The facade of it is very like entrancing and like magical. But of course, once you get into it, you're just like, wow, things are so much better today.
Yeah. Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. 100%. But like,
Yeah, but we're so fascinated.
yeah, it's just
by these
fascinating to see
people.
like, I mean, like just to like see a set that like someone like spent like hours and hours to make, even though like we see ever since Force Awakens, I would say, where there's been much more, Hollywood's started to have a lot more interest in more practical means for films and shows in general. Instead of like, you know, just having a bunch of CGI creatures. Some of those are still needed for certain things, but it definitely seems that there's much more reliance on that, because when I'm watching a horror movie, I don't want to see some CGI fucking thing. That's not scary. I want to see an actual physical like creature or villain that has physicality and feels like it's actually there. So it's just seeing stuff like that in those older movies where like they had to build every prop, build every creature, build every single little thing, and actually had to kind of like invest themselves in that. They couldn't just, you know, act to a ball that had a face on it and some dots on it. Like that wasn't like you look at that today and you think this looks like the most boring shit in the world. Then you see that, you're like, whoa, this is cool. So I think just I think like we said earlier, the facade of it is just really interesting.
Yeah. Can you turn up your mic up just a little bit? I just noticed that there's a little. No, but that's.
Make sure I talk into it too, because I'm having the setting where once I think I was talking to the side of it like this.
Yeah. You know, you're totally good.
There we go.
There we go. Phenomenal. I love it. But I think I think that's why. I mean, I think that's why I'm fascinated by it. I'm also just fascinated by how because filmmakers had to like invent shit back then.
Yeah.
And like, there still is an invention that happens now, especially with digital and the advances that we're making in there. But
yeah, it seems what the Mandalorian was doing with those, the way they did the sets with that, where instead of having a green screen, they have this big TV screen that kind of projects the whole environment. Like that seems like it's becoming industry standard now. Like it seems like they're using that on. Yeah, I think Taika Waititi said they're using that for Thor 4. So even like the bigger budget movies are doing that stuff.
Right. So I mean, obviously, there's you always hope that there's innovation, but they had to like, especially the early filmmakers had to like figure out a visual language. Like they had to like figure out like how to use the camera to convey this sort of grammar, like of thoughts and ideas and emotions. And you just think about, and this makes me think about Orson Welles again, because he was just such a fascinating human being. Like Have you ever watched like those old Dick Cavett interviews
Yeah,
of
those are good.
of Orson Welles talking about like how he like knew Churchill and knew FDR and knew he like met Hitler once when he was like a little kid
Yeah,
before Hitler was Hitler, like before he was
yeah,
like in control of Germany. Um, and like just the way that he talked about life and just how he viewed his world. And obviously he came from affluence. I mean, he came from a very high status society.
yeah,
So his view of the world is so much more elevated, I guess. And it's just he's very intellectual and he
yeah.
just thinks so deeply about everything. He's very, you can tell when Orson Welles, like when you watch those interviews and you hear Orson Welles tell stories about people or tell stories about events, he's so good at like explaining like how he felt, how the other people were acting. Like he really paints the scene for you. Like he's that good of a storyteller that just hearing him talk, like you're riveted. You're just like, oh my God, this is so cool that you did this.
Yeah, I think some people just have that quality. That reminds me of there's this great interview with Johnny Carson and Richard Harris, and he was talking about how he was in this performance of, I think it was Macbeth. It might have been Hamlet. I think it was Macbeth, and he played like he wasn't Richard Harris back then. He was just like some rinky dink little Irish actor. And apparently the guy who played Macbeth was this total bigot towards the Irish. And he was talking about how like, I'm going to get him back eventually. Cause like he was playing like the small doctor role. And it was so funny because he was talking about how he was setting like the scene for you, like you were saying earlier. And he was saying like, and then I give him this one line and then he gives this whole soliloquy and he like said like the whole big parts of it. And like, he was just doing like a minor role. And yet somehow he memorized all these different parts of Macbeth that he wasn't even supposed to be doing. And that's just kind of crazy. But the best part of the story is when he says he mentions that he's supposed to give this cue for this actor playing Macbeth that leads into the most important soliloquy in the whole like show. And then he said on opening night, when he gets to that part and the guy goes like, how goes the queen? And that's like his cue to do so. Richard Harris just goes, yeah, she's fine. And then walks off stage. It's so.
Why did he do
Richard
that?
Harris is not, to my knowledge, like a writer, director, comedian. Is just an actor. He was able to portray that in such a brilliant way that was just perfect. Like I love watching old interviews and from older filmmakers and actors because you just really get a lot of really cool insight into like what the world was like for that industry back then.
Did he explain why he did that?
Yeah, it's because the guy playing Macbeth was like this very anti-Irish like bigot.
Okay, right.
Like he called them like a bunch of Irish slurs.
Ah.
He's like that. I'm gonna get him. like
So
I'm gonna get
so
back.
He's like, I'm gonna fuck over your show.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
Damn.
That he says that just leaves. Oh, Richard Harris is a fucking badass. Like a lot of people remember him like
fucking Dumbledore and Harry Potter. Wow.
Yeah, the first one. Yeah, it's so funny because like at that point when he was doing Harry Potter, like he must have been like in his 80s or 90s. So he didn't quite probably have the physicality, but back then his physicality was incredible. Like he was like moving and just, oh God, what a great actor.
Yeah. You learn so much shit from like those old long form interviews. Like one of the best interviews ever is another Dick Cavett interview with like Martin Scorsese and Brian De Palma. And they talk about like the process and their process and what mattered to them. Like, I think everyone should watch that if they're filmmakers, if they're in.
Yeah, I think I've seen like snippets of that. I don't think it sounds familiar because I remember seeing an interview with both of them together, and I'm trying to think of. I don't think I've seen the whole thing, but I think I've seen little bits and pieces. I honestly think a fascinating idea for like a mini series or a show or like a series of films or something like that would be. I kind of got this idea when I was watching the Spielberg documentary on HBO, and it was kind of like there's this group of filmmakers in Hollywood that were Spielberg, George Lucas, Scorsese, Brian De Palma, and
Coppola.
Coppola. Thank you. And they were kind of like that clique, that group of filmmakers who back then they're the indie bunch. They're not going to make anything good. And now they're like the complete opposite, except for Scorsese and De Palma. They kind of never left their roots. And I mean that as a good thing. But
Well, Scorsese is one of those interesting cases where like he is mainstream, but he transcended the Hollywood system.
his quality has not changed overall in terms of not like the actual, like, I don't mean the actual critical reception of the films, but I mean more just in how he operates and how he makes films. You don't feel like he's making it for like, oh, I got to make a new Star Wars movie. Like you can tell he's making it because like this is something I want to make as like a passionate thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it'd be so interesting to get like a TV show kind of exploring all 5 of those people, because there's so many cool stories. Like one of my favorite is how they came up with the idea for the crawl in Star Wars at the beginning, where George Lucas showed all 4 of them Star Wars for the first time. And Brian De Palma was like, that fucking sucks. I don't understand who these people are. I don't understand where they come from. What the hell is a Wookiee? What the hell is Han Solo? You got to explain this shit somehow in a way that's not stupid. And so that's how they came up with the crawl. Because that introduced because you kind of do need some sort of, if you like, I'm trying to imagine
if you go into Star Wars completely blind, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, watching that first movie without that little introduction, I'd be like, who the fuck, what is going on? Like, it'd probably be very confusing. So just stories like that are so, and there's even this great clip where like Spielberg would like, take recordings of them just for shits and giggles. And then like Brian De Palma goes up, he's like, the exposure is awful. There's no fucking light. Like, it's just terrible. Like it just seems like it would be really fun to explore the lives of those guys when they were considered indie directors. Yeah. And now they're like the biggest directors in the world.
No. Well, it just
like when you think director, you think Steven Spielberg. Like that's
you think of those guys. You think those are like, and just the fact that they all had those friendships, and that obviously, collaboration just breeds better results.
Mm-hmm.
And it just shows you just how important it shows you just how important your friends are. Like,
yeah, that kind of leads into my big tangent from earlier when I was talking about why criticism is so important. Because again, don't be an asshole. Don't like just shit on someone and be a dick about it. Like, you should be constructive. But when you are constructive and you do say, hey, you should do this or think of a way to do this, like that can lead to a much better product in the long run or make better products in the future. So even if it's like if you have the luxury of having someone you're close with who has expertise in that situation, like, 4 of the most legendary filmmakers of all time, then that's great. But also, even if you just have someone who like has limited knowledge in this series and they come up with an idea and you're like, oh, that might actually be good. And like, another thing I should mention too, is that there's this idea where when you say like, you got to take criticism, it means like, oh, I have to accept every single idea I get. Like, no, it doesn't mean that. Like,
that's not what that means.
No, you don't have to agree with every single criticism that you get, but you
respect that it's been given to you, that someone took the time to offer you their opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
and
you don't
to, like, genuinely analyze it.
Yeah, that's another reason why I think it's so hard for people to be critical of each other, is because some people, when you make a film, it's like your baby. And when someone criticizes it, it's like saying like your kid has stupid hair or something. And it's like you're attacking their child. And they're like, you motherfucker, how dare you? Like that tends to sometimes be the response. An example of that I can think of is many years ago when Wonder Woman came out. James Cameron put out a criticism where he was like, I didn't really like the character. I thought she was kind of boring. I didn't like how she was just cool right from the get-go and didn't really grow as a character. Like, that was his personal opinion on it. Mm-hmm. And then the response to that was exactly why I think so many people are afraid of making these statements like this. The response was like, oh, he's sexist, he's a bigot, he's awful, how dare he criticize my favorite superhero movie and all that jazz. But then you got to remember, like, this is James Cameron, and I personally think he's lost his goddamn mind with all the Avatar shit. But he is also the guy who created Sarah Connor, who is one of the best, I think probably the best, like, action movie heroine of all time, who is excellently well developed and is really the star of those Terminator movies, in my opinion. Like, she's the reason, she's the character of those movies, essentially. So I don't think it should have just devolved into just yelling about, he just doesn't like, he's a hater, he doesn't like the movies because it's not as successful. It's like, no, it's just, he gave his opinion, should be taken with a grain of salt if you don't agree with it, and if you do agree with it, you should take it and figure out how can we make this better. Like, that I think should be, I think most people do have that response, but then there's the vocal minority on this shit show on the internet called Twitter that kind of leads into that type of behavior. As even though I'm still trying to like build my YouTube channel and stuff like that, and a lot of people say like, oh, you need social media, I will do everything in my power to not get a Twitter. I will try everything I can.
I don't think
to
you
not
need
get
a
one.
Twitter. You do need to have some social media presence.
Yeah, I got Instagram. I think that's
I
good
love
enough.
Instagram. Yeah, I love Instagram. I mean, I'd be interested in getting a Twitter.
I'm open to the idea. I just
yeah.
really don't want to do it if I don't have to. And if I do get it, it'll just be to advertise the channel pretty much. Because like the best way to describe Twitter for me is that it's like, it's a breeding ground for poorly thought out ideas. Like, that's what it is. It's someone like sitting on their couch.
It depends on what aspect of Twitter you're talking about, though. I mean,
that's true. That's very true. I'm not an avid user, so I could very well be talking out of my ass here. So that could very well be true as well. But like, it just seems like from an outsider's perspective, like myself, it's like seeing. It seems to be a bunch of people like sitting on their couch. They see an article. They don't see an article. They see the title of the article, and then they're like, oh, "I'm outraged. I got to tweet about it." And then they say something, but are also being somewhat hyperbolic and are also being somewhat sarcastic potentially. And then they post it, and then people are like, "Oh my God, why did you say this?" And you're like, "I didn't mean that." And then you got to go into a whole thing explaining it. It's just it seems like a mess. I just don't want to.
Well, yeah, it just comes down to the simple fact that, you can tell when they make a criticism, when they're just trying to be a dick and try to like get that attention and make someone feel bad.
Yeah.
And you can also tell, at least I think, you can also tell when someone's just giving what they believe to be a valid criticism without the intention of like attacking someone.
Yeah, exactly. And like, another reason why I try to like stay away from social media as much as I can, apart from, showing off the channel and stuff like that, is I've been kind of scared off by like the situations that happened with James Gunn, for example, when he got, fired from Guardians of the Galaxy for a moment and was losing a lot of gigs because someone posted some jokes that he posted 10 years ago, which are bad jokes, but they were jokes. They were intended as jokes.
I don't even know what the jokes were. What were they about?
They were like, I mean, this was back when, like, if you like a James Gunn's career as a filmmaker, his earlier films, he was a very like push the envelope type of weird filmmaker that approached a lot of audacious, like he was a provocateur, essentially, a provocateur filmmaker. I mean, he wrote the live action Scooby-Doo movie as an R-rated parody of Scooby-Doo. Like that pretty much sums up James Gunn, in my opinion. Yeah. But they were like some weird like pedophilia jokes. But again, they were intended as jokes. Like he wasn't actually saying.
So the jokes that are on Twitter were about pedophilia?
Yeah, they were pedophilia related. And like I said, they were bad jokes. Like I looked at them.
Yeah,
like,
I don't, I mean, not to trash on James Gunn, but I don't think any pedophilia joke is ever that funny.
No, yeah.
That's
I mean, like,
me,
the joke itself was like not a funny joke. I
Right.
agree with that essentially. But at the same time, it was 10 years ago.
But he wasn't trying to hurt people by making
he wasn't
that
like
joke.
Promoting like what was it, like Amblin, that one pedophilia organization. I'm trying to remember what it's called. There's like
he wasn't
wait, no, Amblin Spielberg's company. That's not right. I got that wrong. I forget the name, but I also don't want to look up pedophilia organization.
I'm gonna look up these tweets.
It's like Mambla, maybe? Yeah, I don't remember. That's okay. I'm going off topic, but like someone pointed that out, and the person who pointed it out was like this alt-right commentator who was not just accused of rape, but is actually convicted of rape and charged with it. Like, so that guy is accusing him of being like, okay, that seems a bit weird. But because of that, like, I just don't want to like accidentally say something that is offensive without even realizing that it might be construed as offensive or become offensive later, and not even realize it. So I'm as someone who wants to, work in that industry someday, it's scary that my entire career might be put in jeopardy. And like James Gunn survived it. Like, he got Guardians of the Galaxy back. He's doing Suicide Squad. He's doing a bunch of other stuff, but that's because he had a platform, which again, ironically, is thanks to social media. But if it was someone who doesn't have that spread and doesn't have that leeway and doesn't have that following, it seems like it could be like a death sentence for a career.
Well, I just looked up the tweets, and I'm not going to show them and read them word for word because they are pretty offensive.
Don't do that. Like I said, they are bad jokes.
They're very bad jokes, basically about him. Like, basically it's involving a boy in pedophilia. Again, he wasn't actually, at least from how I'm reading it, he wasn't actually trying to suggest that or actually mean any of it. But going to your point, you're like, well, I understand why you would feel maybe scared of maybe like saying something, and then in the years that follow, someone will look at that differently. But I guess what you got to ask yourself, like, obviously, like, are you a good person, Aidan?
I mean, I think so.
Like, obviously, we're not all perfect, but like, generally speaking.
Yeah, in general, I'd say I'm not the worst.
Yeah. Like, it's just like, I don't feel like you'd have to worry about it as long as you're not gonna ever, if you're gonna make a tweet.
Yeah.
That is kind of bigoted or kind of like, or it could be provocative in that case, then I would just say, then don't do it. Then just don't.
Probably don't do it. Yeah.
Post
like,
it. Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, that's really just the perks of being a hypochondriac, is I overthink things, and it's probably something that wouldn't happen, but I'm like, what if it does? There's always that little thing like, okay, but what if, like, that's kind of.
Then you immediately come out and you say, hey, I was not trying to like make someone feel bad or offend people or be, because I would assume that you would never post something like that. Like when James Gunn posted, I'll be honest with you, reading that, I like James Gunn as a filmmaker, but that was stupid. Like, that was I agree. Even back then, that's a stupid thing to post. I don't know why you felt the desire to post that.
100%. Yeah.
So
I think he's like grown so much from that point, but like, at that point, it was, even then, it's still bad. Like,
well, and people have to acknowledge that, though. Like what you just said, people have to acknowledge that, people will change over the course of their lifetimes.
I think I know the event that actually triggered this in my head. It's a personal story, but it's not like, I'm not going to name names or anything. So there was a kid at my high school who got into a horrible diving accident, and he became wheelchair bound because of it. A super nice kid. I wasn't like super close with him or anything. I've only had like a couple conversations with him, but like totally nice, innocent guy. One day me and my friend were walking to class, and he like pulled me out of the way for some reason. Like, he like grabbed my collar and pulled me out of the way. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And he was like, oh, that teacher was walking and he almost bumped into him. I was like, well, I saw him. I wasn't gonna bump into him. It was like a weird like conversation. And then like me in like a sarcastic tone just went like, what is he gonna do? I'm like, oh no, he's walking. And then the moment I say that, the kid in the wheelchair is right next to me. And I was like, wait, I didn't say anything to him. I just kept walking. I didn't even we didn't acknowledge the situation because I just didn't know what to do.
That was the mistake.
I know that was like, I should have said like, not you. I'm not referring to you.
I'm so sorry. I wasn't referring to you. That,
Yeah, but I also just didn't want to make it like it. And I feel like if I ever came into contact with the person again and they heard that and they just looked at me like that and they were like, what the fuck was up with that? I'm like, okay, I have a story for you, but you're never going to fucking believe it because it's too stupid to actually believe. So, but this is what happened. So stuff like that. Like, I'm just so afraid I'm going to say something stupid. And then
there's a difference. But like you said, there's a difference between like accidentally saying something in conversation, because sometimes you're like, you'll say stuff sarcastically that you
Yeah.
don't really mean.
Mhm.
Whereas when you're on Twitter, you have to think about what you're writing down.
Yeah, reading sarcasm on the internet is so hard to do.
Well, yeah, that's why you should just avoid that.
Yeah. Yeah,
people
just don't
people
be
should
sarcastic.
avoid trying to be sarcastic about stuff, because then there's a huge, the chances of you being misinterpreted as being like an awful person is just immediately heightened if you're gonna write something that's like sarcastic that you don't mean.
Even in today's climate, I feel like even speaking sarcastically can be like, not only can speaking sarcastically be misconstrued if you take a clip out of context, but there's also the reverse scenario where you say something deadpan and then people yell at you for it. You're like, oh, I was being sarcastic. Like, like it. I love sarcasm. I'm an incredibly sarcastic person. It's like my identity essentially is being sarcastic, but
Being sarcastic, yeah.
at the same time, I can't like publicly be sarcastic. Like it's actually funny when I started the whole YouTube thing. I did it back in high school, and then I posted like edited versions of the videos to my high school news class thing. That's kind of how I got started doing it. And I was very sarcastic in those videos. I wasn't much different. I would always make like self-deprecating jokes, and people thought it was funny back then. And then I tried to bring that new humor to like a new setting to people who didn't know me in college. And whenever I made a joke about like, oh, it's just funny because I hate myself, that's why it's funny. And they look at me like, oh my God,
Are you okay? Right.
I'm not being serious. I'm kidding. I thought I made it obvious, but I guess not.
Yeah. No. Yeah. When you go to college in the city and you're meeting people and you're talking to people, they take everything. Like sarcasm is not well received. Not that people don't like sarcasm, because I know a lot of sarcastic.
It's hard
people.
to translate sarcasm to someone that doesn't know you.
Oh yeah, it's hard to translate sarcasm to someone who doesn't get sarcasm, because there are people who just don't get, like, they're just like, what? Oh,
that actually reminds me. This will probably be like the last story, because I assume you're running out of time here. I mean, how long have you been talking already?
Well, there's no time limit to this, just so you know.
Yeah, I didn't want to like talk for like 4 hours, but like.
Hey, no, I got you.
Okay,
no, like, please let me. I mean, we're exploring deep into your personal life, so let's keep this going.
Delve into it. This actually is a perfect segue to like one of the other things I want to talk about, which is this kind of short film we've been working on for the past 2 years or so. I wrote and directed it, but I wrote it back in the fall of 2018, I believe, and I just kind of like sat down one day. I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to write a fucking short film. I'm going to make something. I'm sick of doing all this ADPA work. I want to actually like make something that's my own, actually do it. So I wrote it. I sent it to the DCC to have like a crew call. DCC, for those who don't know, is like this DePaul thing that they have every quarter where you can pitch projects. And I did it. I pitched it there. I tried to be like myself, which was like kind of like a sarcastic, goofy guy who didn't have a ton of experience making movies, but still, was very enthusiastic at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I made like this one joke that I think was a pretty obvious joke. Like, I think because I already established earlier that I was kind of had that kind of tone. And I was pretty sure I was like, I would love to have everyone on. Anyone who wants to help with the project is welcome. Because let's be honest here, I don't know what I'm doing. You don't know what you're doing. Let's not know what we're doing together and make something good. Like, I thought that was a pretty clear that I wasn't, I wasn't like incompetent and had no idea what I was doing. I had some semblance of an idea, and I thought I made that clear. But yeah, I mean, and to further prove that point, we got a lot of people who were interested in the project to come up and be like, "Hey, I want to be on it." I'm like, cool. And the last person we got was this guy who introduced himself, and he said he wanted to be a producer. And the first person I met that day was someone I knew from my producing class who was interested in producing as well. But yeah, I got his info and everything. I sent an email thanking everyone. He sent me his kind of resume of stuff he'd done before. And eventually I just went with, since he wasn't that experienced, but seemed to be very good on the business side of things. And the other producer that I had on, who wasn't as experienced, still seemed like she was very competent in the creative side of things. So I just decided, it was a poor mistake, but I decided to bring them both on as co-producers. And in many cases, that I'm sure that could be very well. I mean, like in most movies, you can have upwards to like, 20, 30 different producers on a project. Right. Although in that situation, most of them are name only. But chances are you'll be talking with at least like 5 different people on like a big set. So I was like, okay, you know what? Let's try it. Let's see what happens. The producer, I'll refer to them as Dick and Jane, is how I'll call them. Jane was, again, not like super experienced, but she still had a lot of enthusiasm, and she was able to get all the job done and had it to be done. Literally the first day after, acid reflux, after I released all the decisions for the crew, the other producer, Dick, texted me saying that the other producer is not pulling her weight and that he asked to be promoted to executive producer. Oh. I was like, no, that's not how it works. It doesn't really seem like it would add anything. But yeah, that was kind of the end of it. That really was kind of a red flag. That was red flag number 1, but I moved past it because I figured my mentality for this whole thing was that we're all students, we're all learning. So I was a bit more lenient at first than I probably should have been, as we'll get into more and more. The one job we still needed was a cinematographer. So I contacted this one guy I knew from another class who I'd seen his work before and thought it was really good. So I contacted him. He was interested. I told the other producers after I met with him what was going on, and I met with him and everything. And he gave me what he recommended, how many days to shoot, how to handle lighting, that type of stuff, more like technical aspects. And this is something we talked about before, but I also told him, like, I'm going to talk with the DP, see what he says. And the Dick came out and said, like, we talked about this already. There's no way we're doing this. So, like, have you not been paying attention? I'm like, no, I'm just telling you what he told me. Like, he's the DP. Like, it's kind of important that he knows all this stuff. And he's like, and then he said that the cinematographer's only job is to decide what camera to use. And I'm like, no.
First of all, no. There's much more to it than that.
No, not at all. That was the second red flag that, again, I probably should have taken more seriously than I did at the time. But, and then he also said, like, oh, I think this guy's a poser. I think like he pointed, like, it's like, why do you think that? It's like, okay, so I looked at his Facebook and he had a bunch of like LGBT stuff on it. I'm like, so what the fuck does that have to do with being a cinematographer?
Wait, so this guy was like, I think he thought that the cinematographer was a poser at his job because
he looked at his Facebook for 2 seconds and saw that he supported the LGBT community, I guess. For like, what does that have to do with fucking really anything?
His reason for that?
That's what he told me. I thought he was joking, to be honest, but like, I thought that was weird. But again, I that right there should have been like, okay, I got to get rid of this guy. But I still, for whatever reason, still kept him on.
Well, because did you think he was playing? Like, did you think it was all just like a joke?
Well, like, who would just fucking say that? Like, it's so weird. Like,
well, because was this the day that you're shooting on this day, and this is when he says that?
No. This was still very early in pre-production.
Oh yeah, no, you should have fired him that.
Yeah, I should have. Yeah, like
But I'm interested in seeing what happened next.
Yeah. So anyway, I told them on that day when he said that, because my other producer, Jane, kind of had the same mindset I had when we were dealing with all this. At least I think she did, where like we were just kind of like, we're all students, we're all learning, we'll just get through it. Like, it's all a process. Like, but then I told them both that it was very important to keep like our cinematographer and production designer and like student.
Did you relay that he said that to other people, or did you keep that to yourself?
I think I haven't really brought it up that much before. I mean, I didn't mention it to other people just because A, I didn't think it was relevant. B, I didn't want to, like, offend anyone.
you dismissed it. You thought this doesn't mean anything.
I did. I did. At the time, I did
Okay.
dismiss it. Yeah, I shouldn't have, but I absolutely did dismiss it. That's a very accurate description of what happened.
Cool.
Dismissal. But I told them it was very important that we got to keep our production heads in the loop, like, you know, cinematographer, production designer, yada yada yada.
Well, right, yeah, that's you can't.
They got to know this shit.
Your cinematographer and your production designer are like the most key components of shooting. Like it's
100%.
they create the world. Like they make it happen.
They're the person, like, other than me that is gonna, like, I'm just telling them what to do.
Right, they're doing it. Like they're doing it.
They're the ones who are actually doing the stuff.
Yeah.
Couple, like a week or two goes by. Dick says he's having a meeting with our cinematographer, and then I get an email from a cinematographer saying, hey, I didn't know about all this at this point. We'd had a location set up, we've had days, how long we were shooting set up, and like all that jazz. And I assumed, because I told him to do it, to relay all that information to the production heads, like I asked them to. I get an email from our cinematographer, and it was a resignation, because he said, I've been out of the loop from all this stuff. No one's told me anything.
Oh no.
And all this stuff. And that sucked, because I still know the guy, and he's a great dude, but that person would go on to be the actual head of the cinematography club at DePaul. So I was like, at that point, I was like, oh, the guy who we lost because my producer didn't tell him to stay. Like, it was really frustrating at that moment. So I had a meeting with them right afterwards, and I was like, what the hell?
So your producer your producer refused to keep him in the loop.
It seems like it. Like, given what he said before, that I wouldn't put that past him, to be honest.
But you weren't aware that he wasn't keeping the cinematographer in the
yeah
loop.
Because before this, another thing I should mention too is that we were trying to actually, another position we needed was a sound mixer, and he said I'm reaching out to like 4 or 5 different people, and I got in touch with this one guy who I got information from, because he said he was interested in mixing. So I'm like, hey, what's going on with those other guys? Are we gonna get them on here? Because I have another guy who might be interested if we can't lock him in. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm still talking with him. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna ask him then if they're not a sure thing, because he seems like a good fit. And he's like, oh, okay, well, for future reference, let me do my job. And I'm like, okay, but we've been sitting here for 2 weeks. You keep saying you have people, but no names or anything. So I decided to make a decision.
It sucks when you have someone in a lead role who doesn't do what they're supposed to do, and then complains when you question that they're not doing what they're supposed to do. That's the worst. Yeah. You just gotta get rid of those people.
Yeah, I should have realized
because
that
they're not gonna do you any good.
Yeah, it was like, okay, well, that's fine. Just you gotta keep people in the loop and stuff. And then he didn't weeks later. So at that point, I was like, what is going on here? And like, I told them, Jane was doing her job perfectly fine during to this point. She was looking for locations. She was working at the logistics, the production, like all this stuff. Like, so she was no complaints with her. Like, she was doing everything that she was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, she should have just done the whole thing. I mean, she should have been doing all the stuff.
Yeah, she absolutely should have, just from the start. But yeah, moving on. We were looking for a new cinematographer, and I reached out to a friend of mine who's also fantastic, and he said he was interested. Well, actually, before I mention that, we should also mention that there was another guy that we got stuff from. He sent like a example of his work, and I watched it. And I thought at first glance it looks really good. Like, the lighting wasn't phenomenal or anything like that, but I thought the actual camera work was really well done. And that was kind of the big thing I was looking at, because it was kind of this one big single tank thriller type of thing.
Right, because I mean, a cinematographer and the gaffer, those are two different jobs. You can have a great cinematographer. They just need to know how lighting works.
Yeah, that's very true. And like, the lighting like wasn't like, the worst thing ever, but like, it was kind of just like a dark room, and there was like one light essentially. Like, it was a very short, like 2-minute thing, but I was really focusing on the actual like framing and the movement of the camera, which was very well done in that moment, I thought.
Right.
So I thought that was an important moment. And again, this is my first short film. So I was kind of like, that was about my naivete told me. But then I told him like, oh yeah, it looks pretty good. It's actually pretty close to what I was thinking for this. And he was like, are you serious? That was awful. It was a creative disagreement. And in hindsight, he had a point. Like, it's not the greatest thing I've ever seen. I probably should have worded it better. Upon multiple viewings of it, it was becoming very clear that I should have chosen my words more carefully, but it was like my gut reaction was that. And it's fine. Like, creative disagreements are going to happen. Like, that's just a part of the process. But then right afterwards, he asked, can you show me some of your past work? And keep in mind, this is like at least a month into pre-production, right? And I was kind of like, why? Why do you need to see this stuff now? He's like, I need to see your credentials if you're a good fit for the project that I wrote and directed and, as far as I'm concerned, own the rights to. So I was like, that's strange. That was really the point where I'm like, okay, this guy's starting to become a fucking problem. And I told him that, I'm like, you got to start working better with our other producer. You got to start communicating with people or else this isn't going to work out. And he's like, okay. Then a couple weeks go by and then he says something super rude to Jane because like it seems like every group chat he's like, what are you doing for this project that I'm in? And I'm like, why are you wording it in such a like condescending way? And then at that point, I was finally like, okay, there's been enough red flags here that I probably should have gotten rid of him like months ago, but now I'm just going to let him go. So I wrote him like what I thought was a very polite and official DM. It sounded redundant. And I just told him like, hey, I really appreciate everything you've done for the project, but going forward, I just don't think it's going to work out. So thank you, but I think it would be best if you would step down from the project. He responds with typical stuff saying, I think you regret this. I don't think it would get off the ground. And I was like, okay, I was kind of expecting this. No worries. What I didn't expect was him to threaten legal action against me for removing him from the project.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, so how? What? Explain.
Here, let me look up it's been a while. Let me look up. I'm not going to share the DMs because it's private, but it was, it was like, right after I told him, this was like right after I told him like, hey, really appreciate it, but I really don't think it's going to work out going forward. I just think it's much better if we just go our separate ways. And just, it doesn't seem like we're going anywhere at this point. And
right. There's not, I mean, at this point, the dude he's said some very disturbing things.
Yeah.
He's not communicating with the crew heads, like the chief people involved in production. He's not working well with the other producer.
Yeah.
By all these merits, he would be fired for just one of these things. You know what I mean? Like just one of those things.
Oh, in a pro professional setting, like you do one of those things, you're fucking gone.
It's over.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, but because like it was my first time doing this, I just wanted to use it more as a learning experience.
Yeah, you didn't know what to expect. It's your first time.
Yeah, I didn't want to be like that. You know, I didn't want to be like a condescending douche, I guess, to like, you know, fire a fellow crew. And also another concern I had was like, I didn't want, you know, reputation is very important when talking about, you know, student films. Like if you're got a reputation as a douchebag who no one wants to work with, no one's going to want to work with you. So I didn't want to get a reputation of someone who like fired another student and then have like that be like a whole thing. So at that point, it seemed like it was weird to do that. But now I'm realizing it's just, you know, people are professionals and most people are professionals and they're able to handle that much better. But yeah, anyway, he claimed that he was employed, which he wasn't. It'd be one thing if he was like on a student film. It'd be one thing if he got like his producer credit, like in some sort of contract, or he was providing money for it, but he wasn't. It was all coming out of my pocket. He had the title of producer, but he also thought that meant that gave him like the final producer's cut rights, I guess, which isn't how it works when you're on a student film.
This guy's a psychopath. This guy doesn't know.
Yeah,
what he's doing, what he's saying.
It was very clear to me by this point that this guy just had no idea what he was talking about. And like the baseless legal threat was just kind of like the tip of the iceberg for that. And then he calls me and he's trying to explain it. And I'm like, no, that's not, it's not going to happen.
Not a thing. Nothing that you said.
Not a thing.
Remotely a thing.
Not gonna work out. And I did kind of lay into him a little bit. I'm like, how fucking dare you? Like, who the fuck do you think you are talking to me like this?
I would be get the fuck out of my life. Get out of
No, yeah. At that point, like, it was one thing before when we had disagreements and he was being rude, but when you fucking threaten legal action against me, you're not just threatening this project that I've been working on for like the past 6 months. You're like threatening my entire, like, the thing I love doing most, which is making movies. Like, you're threatening that by saying you're gonna take this to court.
What
so at that point the gloves are off.
Yeah, like, but what is this short even about? What is this?
Oh yeah, I haven't told you what it's about. Well, thankfully, after the pre-production thing, production went off. I couldn't have asked for a better production. Like, I think once we actually filmed the thing, I was so happy with how it turned out. All our crew members did a phenomenal job. Jane did. I should mention too, Dick is a made-up name. The other girl's name is actually Jane, just because I actually like her.
Yeah.
She's not a full-blown psychopath. She did an incredible job.
Yeah.
I love Jane. Love Jane a lot. But she did everything wonderfully. She got everything set up right when I got there. Our DP was great. Our editor was great. Production went off just wonderfully, and everyone had a great time as far as I could tell. And I couldn't have asked for a better, like, first time on an independent project. Sure, everything didn't go, perfectly with pre-production. We definitely could have handled that better. I should have, fired someone who should have been fired long before.
Yeah.
But I was very happy with that production turnout. But here's what the actual thing is. So I wanted to think of something that was something horror-esque. That just seems to be like what filmmakers do as their first thing, is a horror thing. So I was like, what like cool horror thing could I do? And then I was watching, what was I watching? I think I was watching the first It movie, not the Tim Curry one, but the first recent one that came out.
Yeah.
And there's one part where, Pennywise has the balloons and the kid turns around, and then you hear just footsteps of him running away, of the clown running away. Then I realized, like, footsteps are an extremely underrated horror movie device because they're fucking scary. When you just hear footsteps and have no idea where they're coming from, that's horrifying. That is legitimately scary. So then I came up with an idea of this film where a grieving woman comes home. She starts hearing footsteps throughout the house. Then I came up with another layer of that. Like, what if that woman is blind? She comes to her home and starts just hearing footsteps, but there's nothing, as far as you could tell, actually there. You just hear footsteps all over the house. Kind of like a ghost story type thing, or if they're ghosts, or if they're something similar to that. I remember when I pitched it, because of course, right as I like finished it, I saw the trailer for that Netflix movie Bird Box with the people have to cover their eyes and not see the monsters, and I'm like, motherfucker, this is vaguely similar to that thing I was writing for the past 6 months, and I didn't even know it existed. So the first thing I said, like, this is nothing like Bird Box. So just want to lay that out there. It's nothing like that. But that's kind of the summary of it. Is a blind grieving alcoholic comes back to her home to hear footsteps throughout their house despite there not actually being any people in there. And that's how we kind of tried to film it. And as of now, we are still, and then another thing of why pre-production is so important is you got to plan for post-production. And that's the one thing we definitely could have done better on. Now, as far as editing goes, it's edited. Like, it's done. Like, the cut's finished, but it doesn't make any sense in its current state because it's kind of just this woman looking around and you just hear nothing because there's no footsteps yet. And so obviously sound is a very important thing. And we've had some struggles recently with finding a good sound person. We finally have one now after going through like 2 different ones that weren't cutting it, unfortunately. But and then unfortunately with those other 2 people, and then we finally found this new person who was like, oh, we can kind of get cracking on this. And then COVID happened, which added another like 3-6 month kind of delay to this whole thing. But now it seems like, since things are starting to open back up again, since vaccines are getting rolled out, since Paul seems to have their labs opened again, now we're going to finally be able to get cracking on it. Sure, it'll be 2 years too late, after we filmed it, but you know what? I'm just glad it's getting made at this point. Like I'd rather not release it at all than release it and have it be bad. Like that's kind of my philosophy. I want it done right. I don't want it
Well, yeah.
like crappy. That was kind of a bummer because I was applying to grad school recently and I mentioned that and they say like, oh, be sure to post all your projects and that you mentioned in your resume. And like, okay, see, it's done, but it's not done. It's like really good. It's probably the best thing I've made, but it needs to be finished. So I kind of sneakily mentioned that in one of my other essays. I kind of mentioned this whole story of the crazy producer and my biggest failure, biggest regret type of thing. So that's kind of how I explained it. But,
yeah. Well, what can we learn from this?
Oh, so much.
We can
learn so much.
I think we can learn a lot.
experience.
Well, one, I guess if someone's causing you trouble in that regard and they're not good collaborators, get rid of them early.
Absolutely.
Don't feel obligated to keep them.
That is the absolute one thing I should have done sooner is get rid of him sooner.
Yeah, because I mean, and it just, I mean, from listening to your story, that just reminds me of just the essence of collaboration. Like I'm also finishing up sound for a short film of mine that I co-directed with a friend, and collaborating with both Jimmy, who's my co-director, and Dylan Smith, who's a wonderful sound guy. We were just yesterday going over the edit again and making changes and offering up new ideas and evolving stuff.
Yeah.
So, that's got to be the mindset of collaboration. It's just like the ego's got to go out of it. Like
definitely.
You need the ego for some moments. Like you need the ego to like propel yourself forward to keep going. But
kind of take control of everything.
Yeah, and if there's things that you're unwilling to compromise on because that would just defeat the essence of your art, then yeah, fight for those. But when you guys especially when you're collaborating with other filmmakers, you have to be open to what they're saying. And you can't be offended when they are going in a direction that you didn't think you guys were going to go on.
No, there's no reason to be offended. Like you can disagree with it, sure, but like offended is like such a big like emotion to have towards a fucking movie like that.
But I think a lot of people feel that way though. When especially
absolutely.
like directors, like and when like a DP and a production designer like say something, they're like, you know what? I don't know if this idea that we had makes sense anymore. Let's do this instead because I think it would make things so much clearer or so much more interesting. You see a lot of directors, and I always say the same thing about myself when I started. Like if I'm comparing myself to when I started the short film to how I ended the short film, man, was it a lesson in humility. Like a lesson just like of taking everything with the utmost seriousness, but also being like, you know what, I'm gonna step back and see my work through the eyes of my collaborator and not just through my own eyes.
Yeah. That's a beautiful way to put it, I think.
Your producer friend clearly was not capable. And not Jane, I'm talking about Dick.
Dick, yeah. No, Jane's great.
Yeah.
We all love Jane.
Well, I'm so glad that it's come together. Like,
yeah, I'm really like when I was watching the edit for it, I'm trying to like, imagine the footsteps because that's kind of like the most important thing. If there's no footsteps, there's no movie. That's kind of the mindset I have. But like, I'm still looking at it, I'm like, damn, this is not terrible. Like, this is actually really, really good. Like, I'm great. Yeah, I know. I am such a fucking like pessimist when it comes to things I do. I'm always optimistic about the other stuff, but when I do stuff, even like every time I record a YouTube video, I just go like, I don't like how that turned out. And then I start editing it. I'm like, it's not that bad actually. Yeah, I'm the kind of person where I'm always like, I could always improve later. Like I'll just be trying to improve endlessly and probably will never like succeed in what I judge as being the true state of perfect. But
well, I don't mean to like be a dick, but I just want you to know, because I had to learn this lesson. You'll never get there.
Exactly. That's exactly.
You'll never get to that perfection state.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I will never reach that point. But that's it, but which is also helpful, because if by some like 0.1110001% chance I do make it, then I'm like, oh shit, this is unexpected. Like,
well,
I didn't think I'd ever do this.
I guess what I mean by that is, I mean, I'm sure that with your determination and with your skill set, you will continue to improve and get better and better and better, and will make great work. I'm not doubting that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying what I mean, like, you'll never be perfect, is we have your own conception of what perfection is, which is this unimaginable thing that, you know, because we have such an expectation for ourselves, we imagine perfection as this thing that is like this unattainable thing. You will never get that, because that doesn't exist. That's just not even a thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even think that the people that we admire, the artists and the thinkers that we admire, their conception of what perfect is, I don't think they've ever reached that.
No, yeah.
So
no, yeah, in your own
even,
head, you'll never reach that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just like, that's kind of like the definition of perfect. That's the other thing that's weird about perfection too, is that it is a very much subjective thing. Like, one thing you think is perfect might not be perfect to others. Yeah, what is perfect? No one knows.
What is perfect?
No one really knows. But yeah, that's the perfect way to word it, I think, is just. But yeah, I'm still very happy that I was even able to, because that after the whole pre-production stuff, I was just worried that we wouldn't even be able to make it, and the fact that it came out as well as it did, despite the pre-production woes, like, that was just really happy. That made me very happy. Like, I remember like one time we got this really incredible shot for it, and then I just like kind of like took a step back. I'm like, oh my God, we're making movies. Like, it was like a really cool moment, just like being able to sit back and kind of just appreciate your work for a second.
Let me ask you.
Ask me this question after it comes out, because then I'll say it sucks, and then I could have done a lot better.
Well, yeah, I might have you back on after it comes out. But I want to ask you, like, in reflection upon production and everything that you've done so far with the film, do you think it was to your benefit that you kind of didn't know what you were doing? Like, do you think that helped you take risks?
That's a good question. I don't know if it was a benefit. I don't know if I'd say that, but I definitely think if I did have more of a grasp on everything, if I was more like, experienced and I knew more, then it would be a very different movie. I probably would have approached things differently. Like, I took a very much like wing it mentality, and I was still like very happy with how it turned out, but I'm not going to say it was a benefit. I am going to say that it would be very different. Like, not like necessarily better or worse, just like it would have been a totally different process.
Yeah. Well, because I mentioned that just because, like, I'm thinking about like something that from those Dick Cavett interviews, something that Orson Welles was talking about, and since we've talked about making, I just keep going back to this, but like,
no, it's meld, it ties everything together. It works.
Yeah, it's like he was talking about making Citizen Kane. And he was like, yeah, so honestly, I met the cinematographer, and he came to me. He explained what filmmaking was in its most essential basics. But he's like, other than that, though, I was a novice to this. And I think from Orson Welles' perspective was the fact that he was a novice, and the fact that he was willing to do things that other filmmakers had never done before, just because he didn't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's a good lesson when you're doing anything. Like when you're creating a new piece of art, or you're just doing a new thing. Sometimes it's a benefit to not know everything, and to be like, you know what? I have no preconception of how some of this stuff works, so we're gonna do it this way. I know, and then that's where innovation happens.
Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta try new stuff and see if it works, or you gotta, make. A lot of times you'll plan something, and then kind of whatever forces may be will change it. That'll, like, some of the best moments in films are moments that you don't even realize are improvised, like that scene in The Dark Knight where they had like an issue with the explosives, and then so Heath Ledger just kind of stands there for a second and then fiddles with the button and fixes and goes back to work. Like that's an incredible like acting moment. Like the fact, like they only had one shot to do that, and if they fucked it up, then that was it. They got to cut the whole thing and kind of start from scratch. But like I can only imagine like what was happening behind the camera during that scene, where they're doing the explosions, like they're all watching the monitor, and then it stops for a second, and everyone's like, "What the fuck? What do we do, Chris? What do we do?" And Christopher Nolan's just like, "Wait, let's see what he does." And then he does that, and it saves the entire scene. Like unknowns in film aren't
memorable
always
shots in that movie.
Yeah, it's an incredible shot. Like, in fact, like it doesn't seem like it's possible to be improv, and it somehow is. Like it's timed perfectly. It's a perfect like moment for that character who's so like dark and evil, but at the same time is hysterically funny. So it's like sometimes you'll get moments like that where you get something you didn't realize you wanted.
Yeah. I think what you just described, when people talk about the magic of movies, people have a lot of like definitions of what that is. Yeah. I think about that stuff. Mm-hmm. Like I think about like, especially having done like a movie, a short film.
Yeah.
And just remembering that set, because you did it in like in the winter up in like in the woods of like northern Michigan. And
yeah, it was like
really
suburban
cold.
Illinois, yeah.
And like, but things were just kind of like, even though there was so much hectic turmoil on set, like just like getting things done and like trying to stay on schedule, and there were so many things working against us, there were also so many like ironic happenstances and like just bends of fate that made scenes and moments better.
Yeah.
And we couldn't have planned it or predicted it, like just how like the weather worked and like just how the acting just sort of happened because of the environment that we were in. Like things just happened that are beyond our control, even though as directors we're supposed to think like we control everything, we control the world, like we control everything that happens here. But like then there's stuff that it was not in our control but worked. And I don't know how to describe that and describe what that is other than just fate and just trusting that it can happen. Magic. It's magic. It's big magic. Yeah.
Magic. No, yeah, it's fun. And every time like, I'm actually like on set, even if I'm not like directing, if I'm just, like second AD, it can even be like a really shitty set. Like it could just be like nothing's fucking going right. Everything's fucking up. Like we can't get this one shot. This actor's not cutting it. Like yada yada yada. It's just fun to be there. Like it's just
no. There's
I don't know if enjoyable is the right word. I feel like I fit there. Like I guess is kind of the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. No, I get exactly what you're saying. There's nothing equivalent to that atmosphere.
Yeah.
Even doing a play isn't the same. Like, and even when things aren't going right, you're still having a ball.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to like say that, and I've said this many times, like being on a set, especially like if it's a hard shoot and the weather's not great, it's not glamorous.
Yeah.
In that sense. Like I know people think it is, but it's even better than glamorous. It's like an adventure.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hard work, but it's the best kind of hard work.
Yeah, it's long, it's hard, but it's entertaining.
But it's entertaining.
It might not be like entertaining in the moment, but when you look back on it, I think you'll still have like some memorable memories from it.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, whether it's good or bad, you'll always remember it.
Yeah, in each film, at least I've only made one like true film that I would say is like part of my canon or whatever, but like
the Wernerverse.
I know that just sounds very pretentious, but I mean I guess that is what I'm saying.
No, I get what you said.
But what was I gonna say? but I would imagine as it is evident when you watch a director that you admire or a filmmaker's career that you admire, each film changes them, and I'm sure that the memories on those sets and what they learn on while doing those films changes how they approach the next film. It changes their style. There's always this desire for improvement and looking at things differently.
Yeah. There's
And-
even like so many movies where like they're not like, the greatest movies ever made, but like you can just tell they had fun making them. Like weird example, I was, watching Freeform or whatever because it's all like Christmas movies, and Santa Claus 3 came on with Tim Allen. And there's bloopers at the end of that movie, and like the bloopers just show like this must have just been such a nice, fun atmosphere to work on. Because like I imagine everyone's like, we're making fucking Santa Claus 3. Fucking who gives a shit? Let's have some fun.
I mean, it's like, man, no one wanted that. No one was asking for it.
We don't even know if people watch these movies, but we're still making it because it's fun.
Yeah.
So that's a good place to end it on, is Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause.
Yeah. No, I love the second one though. The second one of those I actually enjoy.
Yeah, I think I consider it the way they work is the same way I view the Star Wars trilogy, where it's like first one's good, second one's like the even better, and the third one's like okay.
Yeah.
That's the trilogy model.
That's the trilogy model.
Yeah.
Wow.
Every movie is basically Star Wars. I mean, if you watch Pirates of the Caribbean 2, like the structure is identical to Empire Strikes Back. It is identical.
Really? I didn't notice that. I haven't even watched that movie in a very long time.
Both movies have the main character finding out who their father is. Both movies have a critical side character getting lost in some way, like Han Solo getting carbonite, Jack Sparrow getting eaten by the squid or whatever.
Wow. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, there's so many. One time I did like a whole like map. I'm like, they're the same movie, but then like,
is this on your YouTube channel?
It should be. I should make a video on it. It'd be like, they're the same movie.
Because I'm sure there's tons of movies that are based off of like that. Like,
oh yeah, every single DreamWorks sequel is about one of the characters finding one of their parents. Every single one.
Yeah.
Kung Fu Panda 2, Madagascar 2, How to Train Your Dragon 2. All of them have to do with.
Well, that's a trope in like all animated films. Like if they do a sequel, it's about like the past or the parentage of the main character or one of the main characters.
Yeah, it's very true.
Come on, guys, think of some new stuff.
Yeah, make another sequel, unless it's Kung Fu Panda 4. I will watch as many Kung Fu Pandas as you give me.
Are you a fan of that series? Are you a big fan of Kung Fu Panda?
Okay, those movies, you hear the concept, Kung Fu Panda starring Jack Black, and you're like, there's no way I can become emotionally invested into that. I cried at the second one. I legitimately cried.
I don't think I watched the second one. What happened in the second one?
Oh my God. The second Kung Fu Panda is a fucking masterpiece. I'm not even kidding. It's so good. It's so good. Like the first one's like a really solid movie. Don't get me wrong. I love like one thing that DreamWorks always gets right with all their movies is the music is fucking sensational.
Right.
The music in Kung Fu Panda is the most gorgeous, just kick-ass soundtrack I've ever fucking heard. But like the first one's good. The second one, like it's like we said earlier, second one's 100 times better than the original in pretty much every single way. Better story, better characters, better music, better structure, better animation. Like everything about it's just better. I'm not even going to tell you anything else because you should just watch it because that's how good it is.
I don't know if I'm going to watch this movie.
I swear to God, it's good. I swear it's good.
People like, it's really like that worth it to watch it?
It's really good. Like it's really, really good.
We're talking about the second one because I've seen the first one. We're talking about the second one here.
The second one with Gary Oldman as the peacock. Again, I swear it's good.
Gary Oldman is the peacock.
Yeah. Also,
I mean,
Gary Oldman is a peacock, and also in a very small cameo role, Jean-Claude Van Damme is a crocodile. Yeah.
That dude's still alive?
He's not that old. He's like 50, probably.
Oh, okay. All right. He's an alligator in it?
Yeah, Crocodile, I think. Or it might be, I don't know. He's one of them. One of those two things. But yeah.
Why do you think those movies resonate?
Because I think they resonate because of how unexpectedly just beautiful they are. Like you don't expect Kung Fu Panda to like make you feel emotions, but everything just works in tandem together so well. Like the animation,
But
the
like,
music.
what about like how do they do? Like, is it the main? Is it the panda Po? Right, that's his name.
Yeah, in a way it's him because like his character is like well developed over the course of those movies, but like I think the biggest thing is just I love how it feels like the kind of, in my opinion, like one of the more underrated film industries in the world is the Chinese film industry, because like they make some like really great, just especially when it comes to it sounds like a stereotype, but it's honestly true, especially when it comes to martial arts movies. Like, and I think the Kung Fu Panda movies have such a huge element of those like classical martial arts films, where it's like not only like the themes of them, but also just there's the martial arts themselves, obviously, which are also very well done, but also kind of like just these fantastical situations that they find themselves in. And maybe it's just because I like martial arts movies, and that's why it is like one of the most underrated franchises of all time are the four Ip Man films starring Donnie Yen. Those are incredible.
The four Ip Man films.
Ip Man, yeah, IP Man.
See, I haven't watched a lot of martial art films.
That is the gold. Ip Man is the gold standard for martial arts films, in my opinion.
What's like? Give me your top five. I'm gonna write these down while you.
Yeah, Ip Man 1 is the first Ip Man film. All of them are pretty good, but the first one is definitely, I think, the best one of all of them. I would say that one's like everything a martial arts films needs is that. Like that's what it needs. After that, I probably put Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. That's an incredible one. That was
I've seen
it's Ang Lee, right? Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. I've seen
I don't like Ang Lee. I think he's one of the most overrated directors working today, and I love that movie. I think that's probably the best thing he's ever made. That one's great. Kung Fu Panda 2 is honestly number 3. Now,
are you serious? Kung Fu Panda?
It's so good. You don't understand how good it is. Like it's so, people like rush out like, oh, Kung Fu Panda. It's so good. I swear. Those are my 3, 4, 5. This might be cheating, but 4, I'm gonna say John Wick. I think in terms of just
John Wick though technically martial arts? I mean, I guess
I would argue it is, especially like the third one gets really into martial arts territory. But I would argue that is, and like even if it isn't, it does have the qualities of like kind of that martial arts type of thing, where it's like one guy going up against just hordes of people. What would my 5th one be? Oh, I know. The Raid. That's a great one.
The Raid.
I think The Raid 2 is actually a little bit better, but both of the Raid movies are stupendous. I'm maybe judging a lot of those on terms of just the action alone and not the other elements of the film, but you're watching martial arts movies for the action. Like, come on.
I would think that's the majority of why I'm here. If it's got a great story.
Yeah.
Plus.
Ip Man is like, that's a must watch if you want to watch martial arts movies. Like that's essential. It's on Netflix. Everyone should watch it. It's on
Netflix right now.
Yes, I think all 4 of them are on Netflix right now.
Are you for real?
I'm for real.
I think I'm logging into my girlfriend's Netflix. Give me a sec.
Yeah, I think there's like there's even a couple like unofficial spin-off ones because it just got so popular.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Donnie Yen kicks so much ass in those movies.
Let me just. Okay, all right, cool. Let me see. I just want the people to see this right here. Where is it?
Looking up like the poster or something.
Here
Oh
it
yeah,
is.
there they all are. Oh, they have that. There's a spin-off called Master Z. I haven't seen it yet though, but it's a spin-off film.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible. And the crazy thing about it too is that it's a true story.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually. I actually won't spoil it. I'll let you watch it to see like who the guy is, but it's pretty cool how it ties into that. But yeah, all 4 of those movies are all pretty good. The first one's the best, but all 4 of them are pretty good.
Do they all star Donnie Yen?
Yeah, they do. The main 4 do. There's a couple. I don't even know if they're unofficial. I think they're just made by different companies. There's a couple other ones that don't star Donnie Yen, but the main 4 are Donnie Yen.
Mm.
And the third one, he fights Mike Tyson. Not even fucking kidding.
How does that happen?
I'm not. You gotta watch him. You
Oh
gotta
my
watch him
God.
to find out how he fights Mike Tyson.
Oh my goodness! Now I'm just gonna want to go to YouTube and just be like, Donnie Yen fights Mike Tyson in Ip Man.
Well, you should have fought this guy instead of whoever the fuck the other guy is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I'm gonna watch that.
Yeah, that's your
I'm
home.
also gonna look at Singing in the Rain again.
It gets better every time I watch it. That's why I like it so much.
I
It's like
don't know.
my go-to date movie is like, I want to watch Singing in the Rain. What's that? Oh,
Have you impressed someone by watching? Like,
I have.
has that
I
worked
have.
for you?
that's my go-to movie. Yeah, it's worked.
Really?
Because it's perfect. It's a romance movie. It's pretty. It's different from like all the other stuff that happens today. So it's my go-to. Then after that, if like the relationship gets more serious, I put the relationship to the test by showing them Blazing Saddles. And if they don't think it's funny, then it's not meant to be.
Is that really your barometer?
Not really, but like
It's a huge plus if they like it.
yeah, because like, that's a movie that has
I mean,
that
Blazing
movie would
Saddles
not
is
be able to
awesome.
be made today. That it would not be allowed to be made and given our I mean, you couldn't make that movie back in the 70s, to be honest, but like it's just so hysterically funny.
It's such a great commentary on race.
Yeah.
Like with Mel Brooks and what Richard Pryor, because Richard Pryor helped write it. He was going to star in it, but he didn't star in it. It
Yeah,
was
because they
another
couldn't
actor.
insure him because of who's played. I love. Oh my god, I'm forgetting his name, but he's so good. The guy they wound up picking is incredible, and I'm so mad he didn't like have a career after that movie because he's so charismatic. He plays the role so. I honestly think he plays that role better than Richard Pryor ever could, in my honest opinion.
Wow.
I love Richard Pryor as a comedian, but that guy was just a much better actor.
I mean, Gene Wilder, man.
Oh, the whole cast is great. I love
Gene
Harvey
Wilder
Keitel,
is just that's people don't talk about him enough.
Yeah, I mean, like they talked about him forever, but like it seems like whenever they talk about him, they're like, "Oh, he's Willy Wonka." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, that's one thing he did.
That's
but he's
one
done
thing.
So
He
much
did
other
that.
stuff." I do love him as Willy. I love how much fucking just narcissism and he brings to the Willy Wonka role. Like you can still tell he's like that. Like
Well, he's a
got this whole
narcissist,
mystical
but he's
world.
so gentle in that movie.
Exactly. Yeah. Like when you first meet him, he's like, oh, fuck. Okay, whatever. Like, let's get these fucking kids in here. But he's still got this warmness to him. And that's kind of like what Charlie brings out in him. That's why it's so great. That's why I think it has. I'll be honest, hot take. I don't hate the Tim Burton version of the movie. It's nowhere near as good as the original, though. I don't hate.
Yeah, I don't like that, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, Johnny Depp, say what you want about the performance itself, but he's fucking unrecognizable in that movie.
I mean, he's trying.
Yeah.
He was trying to do something different. So
Mhm. I also don't like the Oompa Loompas in the original. They're scary and I don't like them.
Wait, what was scary?
The Oompa Loompas in the original, those green-haired orange bastards. I hate them.
Yeah.
They're so like, oh, that song they sing, just they use the synth. Oh God, I don't like it.
What do you get when is
See that
na.
that alone makes me
As
uncomfortable.
much as an
You just
elephant eats. What would you like getting terribly fat? What do you think will come of that.
It's like, oh my god, just kill the
I
girl
don't like
and get
the
it
look
over
of it. Yep. Oh, I remember. Yeah. Oh, man.
Oh man, still like the movie though. I just don't like that part. Those things scare me more than the part where they go in the tunnel where they have the fucking visions and it has nothing to do with anything.
Oh, that's the best part of the movie.
Yeah,
That's
that
the best part of the movie.
That part's fucking nuts. Like,
Yeah.
and then he's like, "Okay, let's go," and I'm sitting like, "No. Explain. What was that?" Like,
Tell me what that is.
you
What's
need that.
going on?
You can't just brush that off like it's nothing. We just had visions of hell, and you're trying to just casually move past it.
Do you think that because they're going into this factory of like indulgence and just pure id, like they're trying to satiate their id by indulging in all this candy and stuff. Do you think that tunnel is like representing like when you fully embrace your id, you just kind of lose yourself, and like it's almost like I don't even know what the word would be to describe, but like they're going through this tunnel and they're seeing all this like disgusting stuff and like all this horrible stuff. Is that like a reflection of like what they're doing in that moment? Like they're going into this factory and
I think
like
that's
indulging?
absolutely what it is. Yeah, now that I think about it, I've like always like grappled with that scene and I've never really heard that take before. But now that you say it, it makes a lot of sense because all the kids see something that scares them, and Charlie sees Slugworth is the thing he sees. So that's what scares him, is that weird, creepy dude who told him to betray Willy Wonka. Or it's a very good observation. I think that's a very I think that could very well be what it is.
I mean,
have you heard the theory that Snowpiercer is a sequel to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
I have heard of that, but I don't know like what it like. I've never investigated it.
It's incredible. There's a great video. Let me look up the guy who made it because he explains it far better.
Yeah, I mean, you can screen share.
Ever could. I'll just tell you the name of it. Snowpiercer. Yeah, Rhino Stew is the name of the channel that made it, and it's incredible. Like I went into it thinking like, oh, this will be a fun thing. I am now convinced that it is true. Like I am 100% certain. Like this is the only way this movie makes sense in my mind, is if it is a sequel to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Can you explain this theory to me?
I'm trying to like find a way to like summarize it, but like it's a lot of it has to do with, I mean, it makes the argument that it's not like I always thought like it was someone inspired by it, but this kind of makes it seem like it's a direct I can't even really put it in the words. I would just recommend you watch it because it's just so fascinating to watch.
So what it's saying is, in the year since he flew off into the sky in Willy Wonka's fabulous glass elevator, Charlie has reinvented himself in the tradition of his kooky mentor.
The theory is that the main part of the theory is that Charlie is Wilbur, Ed Harris's character at the end of the movie. And this is him after he took over the Wonka company, and because he's the one in the movie who makes the train and everything. So he becomes like God of the train.
But there's nothing about candy or anything in that movie.
Well, here's the thing that really, they do make food on the train, do they not?
Yeah, but it's like,
here's the thing that sells it though. So you've seen it. You've seen Snowpiercer, right?
Yes, a while ago, like a few years ago.
Okay, so the weirdest part of that movie for me was how they needed the kids from the back of the train for whatever reason. Then you find out that they're the only ones that fit into the engine part to control the engines. And then Wilbur says a line where he goes, the part that used to make the engine run went extinct a number of years ago. I submit that the things in that before the kids were Oompa Loompas because they're the only things that could fit in there.
Okay, I think
that's the only way that plot point in that movie makes sense. Because it's so weird. Why would you need two fucking kids to run the train? It's so bizarre. But then he says, use the word extinct to describe a part. Like, that's got to be it.
Well, he uses the word part. He doesn't mean like an organism.
But he says extinct, though. Like, you don't use the word extinct to describe something that's out of commission.
Okay. So
Just
this
watch the
theory-
video. I swear to God, it checks out. But like the videos goes into even more detail about it. It explains how like all the henchmen are all different. They're all different kids, but just grown up. It's really, really good. Like they argue that Tilda Swinton's character is Veruca Salt.
I just feel like this is just, there's a lot of coincidences. I mean,
There's a lot of coincidences, but when it gets to that last one, it's when it gets to the part with the Oompa Loompas in the train, I'm like, this has to be fucking real. Like, there's no other way this movie makes sense without it.
who made Snowpiercer?
That was Bong Joon-ho, future Parasite director.
Did he write it?
I think that's a good question. I don't know. He might not have, because he's not a native English speaker, and it is a movie that's for the majority of which in English. So I'm not entirely certain.
Bo Joon-ho and Kelly Matterson.
Kelly Matterson, I think, might have been. It's based on a graphic novel. That might have been the author of the original novel. But if he wrote it, that means he wrote the screenplay. I love him. I was so happy that Parasite won.
Kelly Patterson. Did Kelly Patterson have anything to do with the writings of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Because if those are connected, then I could believe it.
I'm not really sure. I'm not very familiar with the graphic novel. I'm really familiar with the movie. There's a TV show that got made too recently, but I heard it wasn't very good.
It doesn't seem like he has any connection with.
Yeah, that'd be a pretty big coincidence if there was some sort of direct connection between the two.
Yeah, I think it's fun. That's a fun theory to have.
Just trust me. Watch the video and you'll be convinced.
Who's the person who made this video?
I already forgot the name of it. It's Rhino something. Rhino Stew. That's what it is.
Rhino Stew. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Let's check it out.
Yeah, check it out. Very, very good.
Theories are fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great theory. Okay. Well, my parents are now, since I'm living in with my parents right now, they're telling me to, quote, get the fuck off your podcast thing and eat dinner. So
wow. Well, hey man, I don't want to keep you from eating dinner. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciated talking to you. I enjoyed this a lot.
Thank you for having me on. It was cool to just talk about movies for 2.5 hours. It was really, really fun.
Oh, did we get to 2.5 hours? That's dope.
I think so. It felt like it. It probably could have.
Oh no, you're right. No, we did. Yeah. No,
nice.
It's great.
Nice. All right.
Cool beans, man. Well, cool. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, if you want, check out my channel at youtube.com/howiLikeMovies.
Yes.
I like movies, not how I like.
We will have a link in the description of this video that will get you to that. Yes. There. Oh, that's great. I love that.
There it
is.
What you're doing.
Should
have liked and subscribed. According to my statistics, not all these. Okay, I'm not gonna say that, but like,
don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, no.
You can't bribe them into it. You can't bribe people.
That's not even bribing. It's like people say that to like guilt trip you into.
Yeah, it's you're trolling.
You're watching my videos and you're not subscribed. What the fuck? Who the fuck do you think you are? Like.
Yeah. Can't do that.
But yeah, it was really fun. Thanks for having me on.
No, dude, I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, if you ever want me on again, just let me know.
I would love that, honestly.
All right.
Well, I'm gonna let you eat dinner because I bet you're hungry right now. So
I'm fucking stopping.
I'll let you get to that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All right. See you later, man.
Peace out, man.